Chapter 51. Located in the northeast of North America, Glen Ridge Island is one of the autonomous territories of Denmark. It is the largest island in the world and the island that is mostly covered by ice and snow. Due to the unique geographical environment, most of it is exposed rock and permafrost. Most of the areas on the north coast and the east coast are almost cold and deserted. The inhabited area is about 200,000 square kilometers, mainly distributed in the southern part of the west coast with a milder climate. It consists of towering mountains, huge blue-green icebergs, magnificent fjords, and barren exposed rocks. From the air, it looks like a vast and empty wilderness, where jagged black peaks occasionally penetrate the dazzling white and infinitely extending ice fields. The meadows near the coast are full of purple saxifrage and yellow poppies, as well as shrubby mountain ashen and birch trees. Although the population is less than 100,000, the colorful townhouse scenery, where the residents' houses are built according to the terrain and topography, as if to contrast with the white of the ice and snow, many of the house colors are bright and highly saturated colors. The small population and remote location make this place quiet. But today, Granling Island has welcomed a peak of tourists. Granling Island is well known and its tourism industry is not very developed, but every summer and winter, many admiring tourists come here. However, among these tourists, there are several people with special identities. They left the crowd and came to an apartment on the shore. The apartment has a small private dock and several yachts. There are 8 people in total. There are men and women, basically all white people. They seem to be chatting with friends. They look happy and seem to be very happy about the scenery here. The owner of the apartment opened the door, warmly welcomed them, and let them enter the apartment. After the apartment door was closed and entered, the others skillfully opened the bag in the living room of the apartment and took out various equipment and weapons. Among them, the strong black-haired man threw a bag to the owner of the apartment, who took it excitedly and nervously. "You should know what to do." The man spoke indifferently to the man in Danish, the official language of Danish Island. The cold tone made the owner of the house, the bearded man, nod his head and respond, "I know, please don't hurt my wife and son." The man didn't speak, took off his coat, took the equipment and weapons handed over by one of the women and put them on, put on his coat again, carried a large black bag, and walked towards the dock connected to the house. At the moment it was almost evening, and when they got on the yacht, under the cover of the gradually darkening sky, the 8 people drove the yacht to the far end to break the waves. An hour and a half, the yacht finally arrived at the destination and stopped on the sea a few kilometers away. The black-haired man waved his hand, and the others immediately opened one of the large black bags, unzipped it and took out the equipment inside, which was a very advanced and sophisticated small unmanned reconnaissance aircraft. Under the operation of one of the women, the unmanned reconnaissance aircraft flew across the sky and flew towards the huge Iceland shrouded in darkness. The sound was very faint, and the sound of the waves of the sea was enough to cover it, but everyone's expression was very serious. Everyone put on goggles, and the lenses in front of them immediately turned into a green light curtain. The surroundings changed rapidly. Obviously, everyone's goggles were connected to drones, and they were using drones to detect information. They were on the Icelandic side, which had a very strange structure, consisting of cliffs and rocks. There were large reefs on the seashore, which could be said to be the most suitable area for lurking. The drone quickly flew over the reefs and flew over the cliffs and rocks. Just as everyone continued to control the drone to fly to the center of the island, everyone's body was shaken, and a figure suddenly appeared in the goggles. A woman, standing on the edge of the cliff, wearing a coat, her long hair fluttering in the sea breeze, her eyes meeting the drone's camera. "Retreat!" The leading black-haired white man gave the retreat order without hesitation, and except for the yacht driver, all took off their bloated down jackets and sweaters, revealing the combat vests inside, opened their weapon bags, and took out sniper rifles and other weapons for alert. However, accompanied by a clear sonic boom in the ear, it exploded. The strong wind hit, and the woman on the cliff several kilometers away turned into a light and shadow, tearing through the night, and flew straight towards them. The speed was so fast that she almost passed halfway in the blink of an eye. "Fire!" The black-haired man gave the order to fire without hesitation. The view of the goggles switched to himself, and he pulled the trigger. Day! 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 Bullets poured out from the sky, but the opponent ignored them. Even with accurate shooting, it was impossible to hit in such a strong wind and dark night. Even if the arc of the trajectory was correct, it would be deflected by the opponent's sonic boom. In less than 2 seconds, the figure fell towards the yacht with the momentum of a meteorite hitting the earth. The bullets in the sky were like fireworks to express welcome. With a bang, they hit the center of the crowd. The whole yacht was tilted to the left by this sudden force. The people on the yacht were directly blown away. Only the black-haired man performed the best. His left arm tightly grasped a corner of the yacht and forcibly stabilized his body. And he was still trying to shoot the woman in front of him with a gun in his right hand. However, the woman turned her head slightly, and a dark green light appeared in her beautiful eyes. A dark green light swept across the area, and the surrounding time seemed to be frozen, and those who were blown away in the air paused and stopped. The black-haired man found that his body was not under his control, and the finger on the trigger could not exert any strength. The woman raised her hand and snapped her fingers gently. The men and women who were frozen in the air seemed to be dragged back to the yacht by invisible hands. The sea breeze blew, and everything returned to calm. The woman walked gracefully in front of the black-haired man with her slender legs, stretched out her white and slender fingers to lift the man's chin, and looked at his face. "I seem to know you." The woman opened her pink lips slightly, and she did not see any movement. A black communicator automatically floated in front of her. As the button was automatically pressed. After a while, the communication was connected, but no one spoke. The woman said lazily, "Do you want to die so much?" Pierce. Chapter 52. You broke the agreement of the Supreme Council, Viper. A steady male voice with a hint of oldness came from the other side. "This is not what I want." Ophelia seemed helpless. "Who made my great master take a fancy to Stark's territory and assets? I dare not go against the master's wishes. Otherwise, you come and talk to my master? I definitely can't guarantee whether he is willing to see you." The person on the other end of the communicator fell into complete silence. What a joke, asking him to meet a dangerous and mysterious guy. Isn't this sending a sheep into the tiger's mouth? The end is probably the same as Stark. After a long time, his voice came again from the communicator. "Are they still alive?" "Yes, they are all intact." Ophelia glanced at it with her beautiful eyes. Except for the black-haired guy in front of her, he had a good physique and the rest of the surface was intact, but under the impact of that momentum, his internal organs and the like were probably not intact. His breath was faint and he had officially entered the countdown of his life. $80 million. Pierce on the other side directly opened the deal. In 2002, $80 million for 8 people is definitely a sky-high price. Unfortunately, Ophelia didn't take it seriously at all. "You don't think you don't have to die, do you?" Pierce. $80 million? If Pierce is killed, all his assets will be drained. "I believe there is no need for us to go to this extent, ma'am." Pierce's voice softened a lot. Madripoor still hasn't figured out the situation. The elite team brought by the super soldiers he sent out was captured that night. He didn't know what the means were, but it must be not simple. The multinational joint fleet in the Strait of Malacca has not broken through the ice so far. Adding all these together, Pierce believes that if the other party wants to kill him, he will die even if he is now a member of the World Security Council. He didn't expect Viper to be so murderous and not give him any room for change. People always regret when they are desperate. You shouldn't try to spy on places that you can't set foot in. You should know that if you do something wrong, you have to pay a price. Damn it, what a shitty price. Viper, you betrayed Hydra, and you are the enemy of the entire Hydra. Hydra. Ophelia laughed dumbly. Nazis? Or the hive that wanted to be rescued through the Far Star Project? Hydra, an organization created by conspirators and ambitious people, trying to rule the world? We used to be rats hiding in the sewers, but I am lucky as a rat and I understand how small we used to be, while you are still immersed in that ridiculous fantasy world. Forget it, Pierce, cherish the last night, the wrath of God will burn you to ashes. Pierce hung up the communication in anger. Ophelia was not angry, a destined dead man, why should she be angry for him? She exerted a little force, crushed the communicator with her slender hands and threw it away. With a slight movement of the finger, psychokinesis lifted the chin of the man in front of him. Facing huge pressure, his eyes were as cold as a machine, without his own emotional fluctuations. Chaotic and complicated memories, another poor brainwashed person, let me take a good look at your memory, I'm coming in. Well, there are so many fragments of the tangled memory line, oh. Ophelia's beautiful eyes suddenly lit up as she peeped into the memory of the man in front of her unscrupulously. Unexpectedly, she discovered that the identity of this man was not simple. No wonder your face looks so familiar, Army Sergeant James Buchanan Barnes, Captain America Steve Rogers' best friend, the Howling Commandos, the Winter Soldier, Dr. Zola. Hey? Did you kill that scientist couple too? It's ironic, killing your good brother's friend with your own hands. Bucky in front of him was playing with Ophelia's memory, and he also broke free from brainwashing. Fragments of memory kept emerging, making his cold face twisted in pain. Steve. Bucky, the Howling Commandos. Bucky's eyes kept changing, painful, indifferent, and missing, and he kept muttering. His own memories and brainwashing marks kept impacting his brain. Finally, the nervous system automatically triggered the protection mechanism, causing him to faint completely. Ophelia finished reading the man's memory and reached out to pinch her green hair. Well, should I kill you? It seems a bit wasteful. Such a good body can just be used as a test subject. Although the sixth sense is awakening, the knowledge given to me by the Master includes the poison beyond human cognition and the fighting skills produced by the microcosm integrate. Both are indispensable. The stronger the poison and microcosm, the stronger the power. It's a happy decision, Sergeant. If you are lucky and survive my experiment, maybe you can also get unexpected gains. Ophelia smiled, then flew into the air, and psychokinesis grabbed the Winter Soldier Bucky and flew towards Iceland. Before leaving, the outer layer of the yacht was covered with a dark purple halo at some point. The intense toxicity mixed with terrible corrosiveness melted the yacht containing 7 dead bodies in a short moment, and finally merged with the sea. Chapter 53. Ophelia reported to Leon about the incident of Alexander Pierce and Bucky, the high-ranking members of the Hydra faction. In fact, Leon didn't pay much attention to Madripoor, Kosavia, or the guards. He only controlled the general direction, and handed over the details to Ophelia, Melina, and others. Whether the highest authority is human or a more advanced civilization, it is essentially the same. Otherwise, why would Leon specially recover Melina and Ophelia? The former is an absolute top scientist and has leadership ability, and the latter is a natural leader and strategist. With Ophelia, most of his energy can be saved. The former likes power and the feeling of being in power, so he simply gives up power. In the face of absolute power, Ophelia's loyalty is unquestionable, and as long as Ophelia is not stupid, she knows very well that as long as she doesn't betray, she is also one of the absolute top leaders in the huge theocratic empire planned by Leon. Betrayal? Only a fool would do that. On the contrary, she is more eager to make progress than anyone else. In addition to working hard to improve her own strength and small universe, she spends the rest of her time controlling the direction and formulating strategies. Every day's life is fulfilling and beautiful, this is the life she wants. As for Hydra, whether it is Pierce or other faction leaders, the Far Star Project wants to get out of the hive exiled to the alien planet. For both of them, they are small roles, but Ophelia must show enough attitude. Leon is preparing to find an old friend to talk. In a world between the Earth and the parallel world, the dark energy of chaos is shrouding the whole world. The huge energy forms a head that is larger than a planet, rolling, as if it has the terrible power to destroy and devour everything. Darkness, evil, let people see the soul will sink, degenerate. The dull, thunderous sound resounded and exploded. Rumble, the raging black magic spreads instantly, and the boundless energy condenses into crystals and turns into meteorites one after another, burning and exploding, just to kill the ant file size in front of him, making him hate the opponent. However, he knew very well that such black magic could not harm the other party. Ha ha ha, Ancient One, look at your stinking, decayed body. Human life is so fragile and short. You can't stand the temptation of darkness. The Sorcerer Supreme who protects the Earth world has betrayed what you think is justice and light. You should let those magicians see your hypocrisy. In the void ahead, the Sorcerer Supreme Ancient One, wearing a yellow magician robe, stood calmly. Under the darkness, the red mark on her forehead was very obvious. That was a sign that she had absorbed the power of darkness. Dark power, white magic, are all a kind of power, but you are wrong about one thing, Dormammu, human life may be short, but not fragile. Ancient One was not angry, but peacefully and discussed with Dormammu with interest. And, I think you seem to have been suffocated by a human before. At the end of the speech, the tone became lively and poked the other party's lungs. Dormammu was so angry that he roared, "How can that damn guy be considered a human? That kind of power is definitely not something that humans can possess. He must be the spokesperson of a certain guy." Thinking of the man that Ancient One mentioned, he felt a wave of heartache. He wanted to devour this main universe because it was too special, especially the Earth, which contained extremely huge energy. Once he was devoured, his life level would be greatly improved. But the three magician holy places built on the Earth laid a thick barrier, which restricted his ability to cross the boundaries of dimensions to the extreme. Every time he wanted to break the boundary, he had to spend a lot of power and time. Even if he opened it, he had to face the obstruction of the successive sorcerer supremes of Kamartaj. He returned empty-handed again and again. In this generation, Ancient One was the most outstanding sorcerer supreme of all generations. It actually blocked him for hundreds and thousands of years. For Dormammu, time has no meaning. 1,000 years is just a snap of a finger for him, but Kamartaj will always cultivate the next generation of Sorcerer Supreme. If nothing unexpected happens, his ambition and greed will be isolated from the universe. Fortunately, what makes Dormammu feel a glimmer of hope is that although Ancient One is the best, he seems to have his own little thoughts. The other party also has ambitions. She bears the responsibility, but she also seems to be beginning to hate this responsibility. She actually began to absorb the dark power to maintain the fragile, decayed and old body. And there is another disciple who also has ambitions. He opened the taboo book and unconsciously absorbed the dark power in it. The dark power belonging to Dormammu is equivalent to a medium. He cannot directly consciously invade the magician of the level of Ancient One, but the disciple is too fragile and succeeds easily. He wants to corrupt the other party's mind and make him his slave, so as to break through the three magician holy places and break the barrier to let him come. As a result, the plan just started, but it was over. That kind of powerful and sacred ancient power was something Dormammu had never seen before. His mere medium and a wisp of consciousness could not resist it at all, and was eventually eliminated, causing his plan to fail completely. Thinking of this, he was furious. Angry Dormammu, the vast dark energy was surging and raging. But what made him even more angry was that a familiar voice and the breath that disgusted him appeared. Dormammu, how are you? Dormammu's huge head made of energy stared blankly at the young ghost who suddenly appeared beside the Ancient One, as if there was a big question mark on his big head. The next moment, the voice of Dormammu rage resounded with the dark frenzy. Damn stinky ghost! This hell time difference is also unparalleled. Chapter 54. The rolling energy frenzy shook the whole world. Meteorites and planets along the way, covered by the dark energy, all condensed into dark purple crystals, completely changing the material structure. If the flesh is eroded, the soul, flesh and blood will be drained in an instant, and the body will be transformed into this crystal structure. However, Leon's eyes were filled with azure holy light. Boom! The terrifying microcosmic energy burst out with him as the center, and the boundless cold air swept across the four directions in an instant. Hexagonal snowflakes flew and collided in the wind. The whole world seemed to be trapped in winter, freezing all matter. Even the dark power of pure energy released by Dormammu could not resist this terrible cold air. Condensed into ice. And the frost also spread to the energy head of Dormammu, which roared angrily and opened its bloody mouth. The dark purple energy beam gushed out, breaking the spreading frost and freezing air, but the freezing air was endless and would continue to grow after being broken. The freezing air and the evil dark energy were deadlocked together. The two forces collided, and the storm they set off hit the world, turbulent, squeezed, chaotic, and twisted, almost making the world burst apart. Whether it was the crystallized meteorites or the planet, they all became powder. You can imagine how terrifying its power is. Boom! I don't know how long the stalemate lasted. The center of the source of the collision twisted and finally exploded, and the freezing air and the dark power of Dormammu were completely offset and wiped out. Dormammu is even bigger than the planet. The head red skull composed of dark energy stared at the little ghost standing in the void in front of him with his pupils, and his heart was full of doubts. Surprised at the strength of this little ghost, and puzzled by its changes. Although the little ghost gave him a strong feeling at the beginning, it was far less than now. Its dangerous aura fluctuated more than 1,000 times, and what shocked him the most was that he felt an ancient, sacred, and immortal divinity from this little ghost. This inevitably reminded him of the ancient and great gods he had witnessed with his own eyes. That kind of greatness was beyond his reach. But now it actually appeared on a little ghost from Earth. This little ghost is weird. Dormammu became very quiet after thinking, and the ice and snow were scattered, embellishing this chaotic world, showing an inexplicable sense of loneliness. Leon didn't care about Dormammu's thoughts. He came to see this Dormammu, and his real purpose was not to chat. He stretched out his right hand. The dazzling golden flame ignited on the surface of the body. Under the sacred light, under the world of ice and snow, the stars were embellished. The sacred golden holy clothes were already draped on the body, noble and gorgeous. With the blessing of the golden armor, Leon released the vast universe of his body without any hesitation. Boom! An even more terrifying aura than before burst out. He turned into a golden beam of light, tearing through the falling snow, rolling up the snow and rushing towards Dormammu. This sudden action, not to mention Dormammu, even the Ancient One beside him had never expected it. Then she reacted quickly. No matter what Leon's purpose was, he wanted to attack Dormammu, then the Ancient One would definitely help the situation. Then I saw the Ancient One put his hands together, and then suddenly opened them. The whole world seemed to be suddenly turned upside down and chaotic, like huge amounts of whirlpools, tearing the Dormammu energy body, and the latter reacted very quickly. Facing Leon's attack at superluminal speed, dark purple energy magic shields appeared on the surface of Dormammu's energy body. Not only that, the powerful dark energy turned into chains and attacked Leon. During Leon's super light speed flight, facing the chains that were attacking him, his whole body exuded extremely cold air, forming a huge ice ring that swept in all directions. The chains that were attacking him from all directions were frozen and shattered the moment they touched the ice ring. Soon, he instantly arrived in front of the huge energy body head of Dormammu. Facing the black magic shield that was blocking him, he punched out brazenly, and his fists wearing golden fingerless gloves burst into dazzling golden light. At this moment, he instantly punched out hundreds of millions of punches, each of which was a light speed punch, like a brilliant meteor blooming brilliantly, beautiful and powerful. Boom! 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 Under the bombardment of hundreds of millions of light speed punches, the black magic defense barrier released by Dormammu was as fragile as a bubble and was heavily shattered and swallowed. The momentum was not exhausted. After breaking these defense barriers, it continued to attack the Dormammu energy body. The meteor-like beams almost turned Dormammu's energy body into a sieve, with huge amounts of holes densely packed and clearly visible. Damn kid! Dormammu roared angrily, and the dark purple huge energy body's head tumbled to show his inner anger at the moment. Just a face-to-face encounter, his energy body was annihilated by himself under the intensive attack. Although he could not hurt himself, he also consumed a lot of dark power. In the world of the dark dimension, his power is endless, but not here. In a short confrontation, Dormammu realized that Leon's life level was terrifyingly high, and his combat power was even better than his old rival Ancient One. At the level of the father, he was also ranked in the first echelon. With the union of the two fathers, Dormammu chose to run away without hesitation. He was irritable, but not stupid. There was no need to fight this war that could not be won. It's just that he wanted to run away. Ancient One had already predicted that the magic she released changed the structure of this parallel world and even locked the entire space. Dormammu's attainment in black magic was above the level of the Father of Heaven. It would take time to break the space blockade. This little time was enough for Leon. Dormammu's thoughts were immediately understood by Leon, who was full of fighting spirit. Want to run? You can't do it now, Dormammu. The blazing energy of the small universe was released. Leon suddenly paused at the moment of superluminal flight. The extreme contrast was enough to make a person's brain explode. When facing the surging black magic that was about to be released to break the space blockade set by Ancient One, he shouted angrily and suddenly poked forward with his right index finger. Boom! The surging boundless frost turned into chains all over the sky, and the ultimate skill was gorgeous. The ice crystal ring was activated. The ice chain composed of frost that was infinitely close to absolute zero tightly entangled Dormammu, and even the dark energy body was also bound. Chapter 55. Damn, what is this thing? Why can it freeze and bind even my dark energy? The Dormammu energy body, which was heavily trapped and bound by the frost chain, was boiling like boiling water. He tried to break free with his own energy, but he was shocked to find that the chains composed of this terrible frost could not be broken for a while. For a god of this level, this time is enough to make him die and be injured 10,000 times. As expected, Ancient One's eyes lit up. This is the best time. Although the Dormammu in front of him is not the main body, a part of it belongs to Dormammu's own consciousness body. Through a part of its own consciousness, it controls the dark energy and forms this energy body. As long as this consciousness body is broken, even if Dormammu has infinite energy blessing of the dark dimension, it will take 10,000 years to recover. However, just when Ancient One wanted to beat the dog when it fell, Leon had already seized this opportunity. The noble and gorgeous golden cloak fluttered in the huge air wave, and the powerful force was breathtaking. The pressure was like a landslide. The brilliant golden light spread everywhere, like flowing gold. He punched the bound Dormammu with his clenched right fist, and the terrifying ice spikes formed an ice waterfall and poured out. Even the space along the way could see the scene of condensation into frost. Dormammu, who kept struggling, sometimes getting bigger and sometimes getting smaller, trying to break free from countless frozen air chains, felt the dangerous breath of the ice waterfall torrent that swept over the sky. This move was so fast that even if Dormammu wanted to resist, it was too late, and he could only watch the ice waterfall torrent swallow him up. The next moment, along with the energy body, consciousness was frozen, and thinking and senses were all sleeping in this ice layer. The upside-down world also quietly calmed down and returned to its original state at this moment. Only snowflakes were scattered all over the sky, countless meteorites were also frozen in the distance, and the planet was quietly floating, matching the frozen Dormammu. The picture was elegant and beautiful, but there was a touch of loneliness. Leon, wearing a golden saint, floated in front of the ice ball, which was even larger than the planet. The dark purple energy body Dormammu frozen in the crystal clear ice layer was clearly visible. The powerful power and perfect control are really amazing. Beside her, the voice of Ancient One's praise came. As calm as she was, she felt the terrible power displayed by Leon. The frost released seemed to be able to freeze all matter, even the pure dark energy of Dormammu. Especially the opponent's instant attack, super light speed flight and attack, the cold air that froze everything, the offensive was like a frenzy, continuous, and devastating. Ancient One thought that even if it was her, facing Leon's unreasonable attack, how long she could hold out was unknown, let alone resistance. If Leon took the lead in launching the attack, Ancient One would be in the same situation as Dormammu if she was not careful. It's only been a few years? Leon has quietly surpassed her. No wonder the sacred timeline that cannot be violated was broken because of him. That kind of mystery makes people want to explore, but it is too dangerous. I am also surprised by the attainments of Ancient One magician in magic. Leon turned his head and looked at the bald female magician. The other party's combat quality and magical attainments are worthy of her title of Sorcerer Supreme. No wonder she can protect the earth for hundreds or thousands of years. I am afraid that among all the Sorcerer Supremes of all generations, Ancient One's ability is also one of the strongest, or it can be said that only Ancient One can be called Sorcerer Supreme now and in the future. The next Sorcerer Supreme, Doctor Strange, appointed by her, is not among them. Doctor Strange's ability is better than Ancient One, but he is willful and self-centered. He has created endless crises and major events in the future. It also led to the complete decline of Camartage. The Earth and even the universe have been in crisis several times. In comparison, the Ancient One who silently guards the Earth is meticulous and mature, almost a perfect Asgardian. If he hadn't known the sacred timeline early and wanted to retire to travel the multi-universe, explore and find a greater path, there would be no Doctor Strange. This woman is definitely unique in speculation and being a deadbeat. On the one hand, she borrowed the energy of the magic dimension, but she didn't repay it at all. She also found fault with the white magic god Vishanti, the boss of the Trinity, and deliberately turned to the higher level god Eternity. So Vishanti didn't dare to say anything. This operation was so cool that even Leon had to admit it. In terms of the use of magic by Dan Lun, except for the strangeness of the god of magic at the end, whether it can compare with the Ancient One is another matter. For Leon's praise, the Ancient One laughed. As a person with a stronger life level than her, she would also feel happy. Then he looked at the frozen Dormammu in front of him and whispered, "You chose to freeze instead of killing, do you have other ideas about Dormammu? Ancient One is not stupid. It is her responsibility to fight against Dormammu and protect the Earth." Leon's sudden appearance will not be self-indulgent because of how good the relationship with the other party is. She blinked her eyes, as if she thought of something, and looked at the amazing man beside her with doubt. "You? It's what you think, Ancient One magician. This is a crazy idea." Even the calm heart of Ancient One was stirred, and Leon's crazy idea was amazing. She had never thought about it. Dormammu is indeed very powerful, especially in the dark dimension, but this does not mean that he is invincible. Leon stretched out his hand, palm up, and the majestic small universe golden energy poured into the ice layer like a flowing river of stars. The next second, the naked eye could see that Dormammu's energy body was gradually fading, disintegrating, and annihilating. Until, a pure thought consciousness emerged, sleeping quietly in the ice. Leon's eyes moved slightly, and the frozen air began to compress and condense as if it had life, and Dormammu's consciousness was compressed. Soon, a fist-sized frozen crystal with cold air floated, and inside the crystal was the compressed thought consciousness of Dormammu, sometimes changing into a light black gauze, sometimes showing a solid like a stone, and so on. Very beautiful. Leon grabbed this beautiful frozen crystal and looked at it. He was very satisfied. He had accomplished his goal, so Leon did not delay. He said hello to Ancient One, and his figure disappeared in the golden vortex channel behind him. Only Ancient One was left floating alone in this parallel world that had become ice and snow, with a complicated expression. Chapter 56. Dark Dimension. Damn Ancient One, damn brat! A terrifying roar resounded. In front of this angry master, the entire dimension was in turmoil, and countless lives living in the dark dimension trembled. The terrible dark purple energy rolled like a torrent and washed everything. In a short moment, countless lives were swallowed by the darkness. Everyone was filled with fear. But at the same time, many people were also curious about who could make the king who dominated the entire dark dimension so angry. In a corner of the dark dimension, a white-haired girl in a dark purple combat uniform looked up at the sky. She could see the rolling dark energy torrent, irritable and angry. There was a hint of thought on that fair and beautiful face. Ancient One? The powerful magician who fought against Dormammu's invasion of the universe? Who is that kid referring to? Is he also from the same dimension as the Ancient One magician? What did they do to make Dormammu rage to this extent? Maybe I should go and observe. Dormammu, I can't fight you now, but I will find someone who can fight you. The girl's expression became extremely cold after she murmured inwardly to the end. She took out a blade emitting dark purple energy from her waist and slashed at the space in front of her. The space was cut by the blade and filled with black particles. She stepped into it and her figure was swallowed by the dark particles. Soon, the crack automatically repaired and recovered. In the expanded world of the visual dimension, Leon was wearing a golden holy cloth, his eyes blooming with beautiful azure light, constantly extracting the memory of Dormammu's consciousness in front of him. Soon, he continued to break through the defense barrier of Dormammu's consciousness and obtained many memories he wanted. Dormammu is a life called Falter. This life is very special. It is composed of pure mysterious energy. It is an extra-dimensional energy creature born from pure magic energy. They exist in an ancient universe of a mysterious dimension. At the same time, they are also called Falten Eons. In the Falter dimension, there is no matter, only various energies. All creatures in this dimension are also composed of energy, and absorbing more energy has become their only daily job. Through mitotic reproduction, the purpose of each Faltenian is to expand the scale of the family, which also produces complex family relationships and endless struggles. Dormammu and his sister Omar were conceived by Sinfer, a Falter tribe member, but they are different from other Falten Eons. Dormammu and Omar are born with a greedy heart. They are eager to provide the required energy in the form of matter. In order to absorb more energy, they began to slaughter their own kind and even killed their father. This unprecedented crime was sanctioned by all Falter tribe members, and they were expelled to a mysterious realm containing multiple realities, that is, the Dark Dimension. In the Dark Dimension, they met the necromancer Murix of that dimension, and the ruler of that dimension, Orna, had always dreamed of returning to the era of war and conquest. In order to fulfill Orna's desire, Dormammu and Omar became friends with him and showed him how to conquer other dimensions. In the process of conquest, they accumulated strength for the rise of Dormammu. Soon after a pocket universe was occupied, some destructive creatures were released and caused huge amounts of damage in the Dark Dimension. After the chaos subsided, Orna died in this war, and Dormammu stole the power and became the new ruler of the Dark Dimension. In addition to these memories from Dormammu's own experience, Dormammu's ability information was also learned. When Leon learned about these abilities one by one, his expression did not change much. The Dormammu level is an absolute single universe. With the blessing of the Dark Dimension as the home field, Dormammu's power is endless and can compete with opponents who are stronger than him. Overall, it is similar to what Leon expected, and he can't beat it. The level of the seventh sense makes him belong to the first echelon in the sequence of the Father God, and outside the Earth, his speed is not the speed of light, but superluminal speed, because he deliberately controlled it. After he broke through the seventh sense, he had a premonition that once he started to exceed the speed of light, he would destroy the physical law and affect the whole world. To put it bluntly, the carrying rule on the planet can only be the limit of the speed of light, not superluminal speed. If it exceeds the speed of light, the planet will be destroyed on the spot. In the previous short battle with Dormammu, he showed that the speed of flight was superluminal, and Dormammu didn't react much at his level. Extracting Dormammu's memory is not only about thinking about Dormammu in the dark dimension, but also confirming the gap between him and Dormammu. Now it seems that the gap is almost as big as he expected. If he wants to defeat Dormammu, he must burn the 7th sense microcosm to the limit and reach the level of the 8th sense, and even have enough accumulation of the 8th sense microcosm, and wear a sacred cloth on the body. I believe it is enough to defeat Dormammu. The 8th sense is a microcosm of higher order than the 7th sense in the source of human life, that is, alaya consciousness. The person closest to God refers to the person who lives without relying on God's blood and comprehends the 8th sense. The 8th sense of the microcosm is the highest sense in the human microcosm, and above the 8th sense is the microcosm of God. Chapter 57. In this realm, one can feel the changes of everything in the world, see the root of the world, understand the laws of operation of all things in the world, know the past, present and future, listen to the voices of the forest, wind, river, nature, earth, and heaven and talk with them. After the end of the physical life, the soul merges with heaven and earth, and is everywhere. Break the rules of the underworld, or go to the underworld. In this universe, he can ignore the rules and go to other dimensional worlds without being suppressed by the rules between dimensions. The 7th sense, manas, is the time sense, which can accelerate its own time, and the 8th sense, which comprehends life and death, is also the space sense. In this field, one can break free from the cause and effect between oneself and space and freely go to other dimensions. Just like Dormammu's life level is at the 2, 5, 3 level of level single universe, his single level will also be suppressed by a large margin. The magic barrier of the 3 magician holy places infinitely magnifies this suppression, suppressing Dormammu by a large level to the level Godfather, and it is still the middle and lower echelon of Godfather. If Leon has comprehended the 8th sense, he can ignore the suppression and fully exert his own experience. The 8th sense is higher than the 7th sense of the microcosm, and the combat power will be greatly increased, such as the Sala Twin Trees Garden. The 3 Gold Saints Saga, Camus, and Shura used the Trinity Shadow Battle secret technique that combines their ultimate microcosms into one, Athena's Wonder, breaking the 7th sense Shaka's greatest secret technique, the Heavenly Dance Wheel, but Shaka awakened the 8th sense and faced the combined attack of the 3 7th sense microcosms without any damage, and entered the underworld alive. In addition, when the bronze little strong men awakened the divine cloth, in addition to relying on the blood of the gods, they also raised their microcosms to the level of the ultimate microcosm. The ultimate 8th sense microcosm power can surpass the gods. In the pure land of bliss, the Bronze Gate killed the twin gods with the ultimate secret technique of the 8th sense microcosm. This is the stage that Leon will go through in the future. The 8th sense of the ultimate microcosm, the divine cloth, he has the blood of Athena for the latter, and he only needs to comprehend the former. After thinking about it, Leon got the most accurate positioning of his strength. At the level of Father God, except for Odin, he is basically invincible. As his microcosm continues to improve to the limit, it can even compete with a single universe. After getting the answer he wanted, he looked at the sleeping mind and thoughts of Dormammu in the frozen crystal in front of him, and a smile flashed in his eyes. He was not a person who liked to waste. He read the memory, but there might be considerable use value. Erase the consciousness and thinking memory, transform it into the purest consciousness energy, and then let people consciously absorb it, which may greatly develop the brain and improve the soul level. While erasing, you have to keep Dormammu's consciousness in a deep sleep and unable to resist. Fortunately, the knowledge contained in Athena's blood contains the secret skills of other saints' song, but it takes some time. It's really a hard life. Leon pinched his chin with a distressed look. As for whether he was afraid of Dormammu's revenge, he had never thought about this question. Not to mention that Dormammu had a small part of his consciousness and thinking aggregate cut off, it would take a lot of time for Dormammu to recover. Even if Dormammu ignored revenge and crossed the dimensional boundary to come to Earth, in the dimensional rule, the magician holy place magic world double suppression, only the Father God level. Facing him, it was obviously a waste. In the future, maybe the magician holy place will be destroyed, and this time will be enough for Leon to grow. At that time, Dormammu will continue to be a waste. So from the beginning to the end, Leon didn't take Dormammu to heart at all. The home advantage plus his amazing growth rate is the capital of fearlessness. Leon is fearless, but at the same time, there is someone who is full of panic. That is Alexander Pierce. At the moment has only been a few years since he stepped down as the director of the Strategic Defense Attack and Logistics Support Bureau. Now he is a member of the World Security Council and will seek the position of minister in the future. He is secretly the leader of the Hydra faction, with countless loyal Hydra soldiers, and secretly armed forces and assets that are unimaginable. But it is such a top-level person who holds absolute power openly and secretly. He is now sitting in the living room of his villa, thinking confusedly for a whole night. Not long ago, Pierce learned a piece of news, that is, Baron Strucker, one of the leaders of the Hydra High Council, and his assets were taken down by the venomous woman, and he smelled the potential danger. Originally, he was also a Hydra high-level person. Pierce's power is not small, and it can even be said that he is definitely one of the best among all the leaders. After all, he has been parasitic on the special organization established by the most powerful country in the world since World War II and has grown for decades. His power is beyond imagination. Although Viper is also a high-level leader, his power and strength are the weakest. He spent a lot of money to control the port of Madrid, which is not worth mentioning at all. But who would have thought that God suddenly came and used his anger and cruelness to create the port of Madrid, occupying the port of Madrid, and Viper did not die this time, but attached himself to the other party and annexed Baron Strucker. This is in Pierce's opinion, Viper was just expressing his loyalty to the god she had surrendered to. Who knows, will he be the next one? Whether it was to resolve potential dangers or to covet the powerful power displayed by the god, when he learned that Madripoor harbor was making undisguised 3.8 moves all over the world, he sent his most trusted super soldier 2RI warrior and a team of 7 elite warriors to the Arctic ice base to investigate. But he never thought that the other party would find and easily control his people, and even expressed his attitude to let him die. Is Pierce angry? Definitely angry. But more of a fear. The hundreds of miles of glaciers created by the Strait of Malacca have been a headache for nearby countries until now. Facing such a mysterious and powerful person, Pierce found that his rights and the armed forces he controlled were so small. Damn, I can't just give up like this, maybe fury. Pierce's body shook, raised his slightly old and tired face, and his eyes flashed with madness. Please subscribe, 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 thank you. Guys. Chapter 58. Trident Building, Long Island, New York. Walter. Nick Fury, the one-eyed black bald director wearing a black windbreaker and an eye patch, looked at Alexander Pierce, who broke into his office early in the morning and was both his mentor and friend. His face was full of doubts. Are you kidding me? Is this a joke of the century? Don't you know what their department started with? That is Hydra's enemy treasure, which is specifically used to kill Hydra. As his former boss, Pierce, the director of S.H.I.E.L.D., you told me that Viper is Hydra, and Madripoor Port is controlled by Hydra. Then the one who created Madripoor Port and the Strait of Malacca incident is also Hydra. Fury doesn't think this joke is funny. If the person behind the scenes of Madrid Port was Hydra, how could they still be calm and focused on the development of Madrid Port? They also established a unique system to make the poor people who were originally in chaos and could not eat rich, and promulgated a legal system to make the current Madrid Port completely a forbidden area for criminals. Which criminal in the world, no matter how arrogant, doesn't know that going to Madrid Port is equivalent to seeking death? As soon as he got off the plane, he was arrested, tortured, and shot, and the assets he had worked hard to get through the crime would also be confiscated. The main goal is to leave this world cleanly. Madrid Port is now the world's most dazzling bright card, with an elegant, quiet, and peaceful environment. Both the rich and the ordinary people can live here. The environment built by nature and the day after tomorrow, rich and diverse food, retro and modern style buildings, commercial streets, amusement parks, etc., have made it one of the most popular tourist countries in the world. Even his agents like to go to Madrid Port for vacation with their families during holidays. And the prices are affordable even for ordinary families. With such a country developing, Pierce told Lord Rui that the person who was in charge of everything was actually a Hydra. Fury's first reaction was to laugh. If all Hydra people were like this, they would not be rejected by all countries. What is the purpose and concept of Hydra? Chaos, madness, dictatorship, and iron rule. Madripoor Port, dictatorship seems to be there. What is the first two about it? And chaos and madness, as soon as there is this sign, it can be suppressed by the intelligence agency department established by the other party and the police in the police station in minutes. I'm not kidding, Fury, you should be aware of their recent actions. Pierce stared at Fury with a serious expression. Fury frowned. Did you go to investigate? As the world's largest special department, its sphere of influence spreads all over the world. Even if the ancient eastern country cannot get involved, it has some connections, so with their energy Madripoor's recent series of major actions will definitely not escape his eyes. From the actions, it is not difficult for Fury to analyze something from it. It's nothing more than a military base or a training base. Their beacon of freedom has already done this. It's impossible to say that Fury doesn't want to explore the secrets of Madripoor and the powerful ruler behind it. He is suspicious, self-centered, and has a strong desire for control. In Fury's view, anyone in the world who can pose a threat must have a data file established, either to win over or to monitor. He requires absolute control, and once any supernatural event occurs, it can be handled as quickly as possible. But Fury has a strong desire for control, but he is not stupid. Madripoor is a restricted area. With the power displayed by the ruler, Fury has long listed it in the most dangerous sequence and cannot be provoked at all. Unless he summons his trump card. In theory, he understands the truth, and Pierce, an old man, cannot be unaware of it, but... Fury's expression did not change, but he had a little doubt about the old friend in front of him. I sent 8 agents to the Arctic Icefield base. They are training soldiers, super soldiers. Do you understand what this means? Pierce said it without hesitation, and tried to exaggerate it to death. Fury remained silent. Pierce ignored him, his expression was anxious and full of worry. Think about it, Fury, a group of monsters who are more powerful than Steve Rogers, what do they want to do? Don't tell me that they set up and trained this army just to curl up on that island. Look at their series of actions, the multinational joint fleet in the Strait of Malacca, they kill as they say. Tens of thousands of innocent lives are just like ice sculptures in that sea area. Pierce was anxious in his heart, but he showed righteous words on the surface, as if he was thinking about the safety of the world. While he was talking, he was also looking at Fury without expression. Fury was the best talent he chose. He was a natural agent with a deep mind. Even Pierce, who had been with Fury for a long time, did not dare to say that he could figure out his thoughts. But Pierce knew that if he wanted to get through this level, he had to get Fury's support. A small accident made Pierce aware of Fury's abnormality. Pierce secretly conducted many 043 investigations, but could not find anything. But he guessed that Fury should have secretly prepared some kind of weapon or power, which was his last trump card. Pierce was not sure of his guess, but now, he had no choice but to gamble. In order to make Fury take out this trump card, Pierce had to infinitely exaggerate the danger of Madripoor Harbor and the mysterious ruler. To make Fury in crisis. But what made Pierce feel cold was that Fury thought for a moment and shook his head. We can't do it, Pierce. He and Pierce looked at each other. There was an emotion in his eyes that Pierce couldn't understand, deep and dark. Pierce sighed secretly. He knew very well that his abrupt behavior had aroused the other party's suspicion, but he had no way out and had to stick to the end. He remained puzzled on the surface. Why? You know how dangerous they are, but you still let them go. Think about it, a fleet that can easily destroy 2 aircraft carrier battle groups, leading a monster army with stronger physical fitness than Steve Rogers, who else in the world can resist them? Their edge will sweep the entire world, turning the world into a turbulent, chaotic war era. Chapter 59. Pierce spoke passionately, his throat was smoking, and then he saw Fury pouring a cup of coffee slowly, taking a sip, and looking like he would listen quietly, and you continue to talk. Pierce choked. Seeing the ugly face of his former leader, Fury held the coffee and whispered, "What do you want us to do? Declare war. The White House and the military will not choose to do this. No one knows the information of the ruler. The unknown is the most terrifying. You know this better than me, Pierce. We are all the same." At this point, Fury's tone was full of sarcasm. We use force to fight for interests and achieve our goals. When we find that there is a huge disparity in power, we will be as obedient as sheep and try to win over. The core logic is interest. He looked at Pierce, and his one eye was shining with indifference and questioned, "So, what is your purpose?" Pierce was silent. The crisis made him lose his former calmness and composure, and he was caught by this agent field even though he revealed his flaws. Thinking rapidly, after coming up with an idea, Pierce sighed, someone wants to explore the powerful secret of that ruler, Madripoor. He caused millions of people to starve, disease, and limb defective in an instant. They don't have much time to wait. Fury immediately understood, and his inner guess was basically the same, otherwise, he couldn't figure out why Pierce would take such a risk to explore. However, what he didn't expect was that Pierce changed the subject. His expression was serious, and he said affirmatively, "But there is one thing I didn't lie about, under the ruler, there are a large number of Hydra lurking. I don't know what means the other party used to reveal my information, you know their style, I am very dangerous, I need help." Fury stared at Pierce's calm face with one eye. "I need a list. After I'm safe. I have a safe house, only I know it." Pierce pondered for a moment. He knew that this was Fury's last bottom line, and nodded in agreement. In the square of S.H.I.E.L.D. Trident building, Fury led Pierce to the parking area. However, after just 2 steps, the two stopped, especially the latter, whose expression became extremely ugly, fearful, with a few drops of cold sweat on his forehead. Because right in front of them, a figure appeared at some point. Brown coat with white collar lining, casual black jeans and high-bottomed boots, long green hair blown by the breeze, that charming and delicate face, people can't look away. Especially those slightly squinting beautiful eyes, as if they have magic. Pink lips outlined an arc, less than 15 meters away from Fury and Pierce. Fury put his right hand under the belt of his black windbreaker, staring at the woman in front of him vigilantly. He looked around with his peripheral vision. At the moment, there were not many agents in the surrounding square, but at least there were dozens or hundreds of agents coming in and out, but the agents seemed to have not noticed them and the mysterious woman who suddenly appeared. As for Pierce, at the moment he was already stiff, and his heart was filled with fear. "It's nice to see you again, Mr. Pierce. I never thought that before facing death, the person you trust the most is also the one you were most vigilant and cautious of." The person who came was Ophelia. Her slender hands were in her coat pockets, and her tone was gentle, elegant, and dangerous. Pierce felt a chill on his back. Before he could speak, Fury took the lead and said in a deep voice, "Ms. Viper, this is the United States. The meaning is self-evident." Viper was not surprised that the other party knew him. He tilted his head slightly and glanced at the bald one-eyed black man with a puzzled tone. "Then what?" "Pierce is a member of the World Security Council. He has many friends behind him. I think the one behind you should not want to see the dispute between the two countries." Fury knew whether Viper was playing dumb, but no matter what, he couldn't let Pierce be killed in front of him. As he said, Pierce is in a high position and has worked hard for many years. The interest groups behind him cannot be underestimated and can even affect some decisions of the United States. Let alone the personal relationship and communication between the two, Fury is unwilling to see the consequences. America? Compared with God, isn't it a little unworthy of mention? Ophelia shook her head slightly, but from the perspective of the other two, they still believed that the United States had a certain deterrent effect on her dear master. But the difference in cognition determined this thinking. Since Leon gave her power and knowledge and awakened the small universe, she understood that the so-called strongest country, the technology is so small and fragile. She knew very well that if she wanted to, given a certain amount of time, she could completely wipe out the entire American plate from the earth. What's more, when the green light and shadow cut through the air like a thread, and Ophelia's figure suddenly appeared in front of the two people as if she was moving sideways. She stretched out a hand to grab Pierce's neck and lifted him off the ground. Pierce grabbed the hand that was pinching his neck with both hands weakly. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't break free, and his old face began to turn red. Fury reacted and took out his pistol instantly, pointing the muzzle at Ophelia's temple, but then his expression became very bitter, because he felt that he couldn't move. It seemed that an invisible force controlled his body. His one eye stared at the delicate profile of the woman in front of him, and a huge wave was set off in his heart. Viper, the person who originally caused turmoil in Madrid Slope, finally took control of Madrid Slope. There is data record in SHIELD. Although her identity is questionable, a lot of information about her past activities has been collected. In the data, Viper is very dangerous, a very dangerous poison maker. The poison she made is very deadly, and she has super top-level combat, firearms, and other abilities. But these are all within common sense, but the speed just now showed, pinching Pierce, who is nearly 1.8 meters tall and 150 kilograms, and easily lifted off the ground. This strength is not something that ordinary people can have, not to mention the strange power ability that held him in one hand. These are all abilities that Viper has never shown in her past experiences. Hidden? Absolutely not. In the crucial power grab at Madripoor Harbor, Viper did not show up, and made a deal with Wolverine Logan. With Logan's help, she succeeded in grabbing power. Then the answer is very simple. It is most likely the ability given by the person behind this woman. As Fury's brain was thinking rapidly, he secretly regretted that his trump card needed to use the old-fashioned pager hanging in the tactical belt. Back to now. Ophelia's eyes flashed with dark green light, and the invisible psychokinesis rushed into the subcortex of Pierce's neck, and then a microchip stained with blood broke through the skin and slowly floated in front of her. Very good technology, but I don't know if it comes from your so-called Strategic Defense Attack and Logistics Support Bureau for the Homeland, or from your own Hydra technology products. Fury, who was originally thinking, suddenly widened his one eye and looked at Pierce in disbelief. As if he couldn't believe his ears. Fury is a suspicious person. He doesn't trust anyone, even his most trusted subordinates. Pierce is the same, but he has never thought that this former boss and old friend is not a Hydra. Hydra, what an old name. Since the disintegration of World War II, a large number of Hydra have been arrested and shot, and have disappeared completely for decades. Fury has long thought that Hydra has been buried in the long river of history. This is why he didn't believe Pierce's previous statement that Viper was Hydra. After all, the department he led has been hunting and killing for countless years until it was completely announced that there is no Hydra. He witnessed it with his own eyes. But now, Viper actually said that Pierce is Hydra. Fury naturally didn't want to believe it, but he knew very well that Viper had no need to lie. As he continued to associate, Fury's forehead was covered with cold sweat. His heart was even more turbulent. He thought of a more terrible reality. Fury's eyes were filled with a terrifying cold light, and he gritted his teeth secretly. Ophelia pulled out Pierce's mental defense chip, and the huge mental power read Pierce's memory unscrupulously, and all the secrets buried in his heart were exposed in front of Ophelia. After browsing the memory, Ophelia couldn't help laughing, turned her head and looked at the black bald man who was fixed by him with psychokinesis. After a little consideration, she withdrew psychokinesis. Fury's tense body suddenly relaxed. Ignoring this physical and psychological contrast, he put down the gun aimed at Ophelia. His expression was serious and cold, and he said in a low voice, "Are you Hydra too?" My situation is very bad." "Very bad?" Ophelia tapped her chin. Fury took a deep breath, his expression calmed down again, and said calmly, "What do I need to pay?" Smart people don't need to beat around the bush when talking. Fury knows very well that he has to pay a price for what he needs. Ophelia really admires this dark-skinned bald man, no wonder Pierce is afraid of him. "I saw a very interesting project that I had shelved in the memory of this old guy, the Pegasus Project." Hearing the Pegasus Project, Fury's eyes moved slightly. He knew what this woman's purpose was. "You know the chip behind your neck can't protect your brain," Ophelia said lazily. Fury felt cold in his heart. This woman really has no scruples. He immediately said decisively, "Tesseract." After the development of the light-speed engine of the Pegasus Project was stranded, we have been secretly researching. It seems that you really have a lot of good things here. Ophelia smiled happily. "Tesseract, this kind of magical thing, I believe the owner will like it very much. We can cooperate," Fury said without hesitation. The situation was extremely complicated. Even if he had to pay a higher price, he still needed external help to clean up SHIELD, unless he either changed his cards or called in people, but calling in people would also take time. "I like your cleverness." Ophelia was more satisfied. After spending a long time with Leon, she understood that her young god was not interested in those complicated things at all. He was just a lazy guy. Basically, she and Meili were in charge of formulating the territory development plan. With her strategic vision, she guessed Leon's intentions from the actions in Madripoor Harbor. The Earth was just an anchor for Leon. The real purpose was outside the Earth. The Earth was more like a basic talent training vessel. Ruling the Earth? There was no need for that. It was best to maintain a relatively stable development, which was in line with the current interests of Li Xiao. It would be good to have a good partner. At least it could prevent some boring and stupid guys from looking for death and trouble to the greatest extent. The black bald man in front of him was obviously a good partner. Having made a decision, Ophelia let go of her hand. With a thump, Alexander Pierce sat on the ground with one hand on his neck, blushing and coughing continuously. Ignore this old guy. Ophelia put her hand back into her coat pocket, and her slightly narrowed eyes showed her happy mood at the moment. Kaka Fury's ears moved slightly. The sound of glass breaking? The next moment, the atmosphere of the whole square suddenly changed. The agents and clerks who were coming in and out immediately noticed the sudden appearance of Ophelia and the other two. Especially when they noticed the guns held by Pierce and Director Fury, who were sitting on the ground in despair. All the agents immediately drew their guns and aimed at Ophelia, the stranger who suddenly appeared. Alarms sounded in the building. But before the agents could take the next step, Ophelia's beautiful eyes flashed green light, and the majestic psychokinesis washed the entire Trident building like a tide. Boom! Whether inside or outside the building, most of the agents were instantly frozen in place by the powerful psychokinesis and could not move. Only a small number of agents had no idea what was going on. They found that their companions were frozen in place in various strange postures. Everyone was confused and puzzled. Quick, in Area 1, all agents act immediately. While these agents were still wondering, the command from the loudspeaker came to their ears. Chapter 60. The agents who were not frozen came to the square at the fastest speed with weapons in hand. When they saw their colleagues who were also frozen, they couldn't help but tremble. This scene seems a little familiar. Isn't this what Professor X in Mutant usually does? When the X-Men were on a mission, the mutant leader used his mental power to freeze a group of people, including the airport. Although people were frozen by mental power and had no subsequent memories, time was still passing. Some noise was also solved by them. The situation at that time was observed through surveillance. Now they come again? And they killed in the headquarters base? But why were they not frozen by mental power? Although they were confused, the agents still rushed to Area 1 and surrounded Area 1. There were armed helicopters floating in the sky, and there were armed vehicles around. The leader was a slightly older female white agent with short black hair. From her capable temperament, she was an elite high-level agent, holding a 637 pistol. She glanced at Ophelia, who was surrounded by a circle, and Pierce, who was sitting slumped, and finally set her sights on Nick Fury, saying coldly, "Director Nick Fury, I need to explain." While speaking, there was a slight movement of the finger on the gunshot wound. Unfortunately, it could not escape Ophelia's eyes, but she smiled and said nothing. Fury shook his head. "She is not an enemy, Syria." Syria pursed her lips. What she said just now was a unique code between agents, which was to hint and issue instructions and make decisions at this critical moment. But Fury did not respond. Then Senator Pierce. "This is what we are going to discuss now." Fury scanned the whole room with his single eye and said in a cold voice, "Tell me, do any of you still remember Hydra?" "Hydra, wasn't our original purpose to fight against Hydra's power? The Academy has records of this, why did the director suddenly mention Hydra?" The agents looked at each other, as agents of this department, ABS, who didn't know about Hydra. "Director Nick Fury, what do you want to say? Is this related to what happened just now?" As the highest level agent in the room except Nick Fury, Syria asked. Fury said expressionlessly, "Including Alexander Pierce, whom we once respected, all those controlled agents are from Hydra." Yeah, Fury's words were like thunder exploding in everyone's ears. The agents widened their eyes and looked at Fury in disbelief. Even a senior agent like Syria failed to control her expression. She lost her voice and said, "How is this possible? Director Nick Fury, you should know that you will be responsible for saying this." I will take full responsibility for what I said, Syria, but now I order all of you as the director to hurry everyone and mobilize all your forces to remove weapons and equipment from all controlled agents and put them in medical custody. I need you to interrogate these agents as quickly and efficiently as possible. I want to find out the identities of everyone. You know what this means, Syria. We need to race against time. Otherwise, we will face a terrible disaster. Yes, Director. Looking at Fury's solemn order, Syria's heart tightened, but the order was above everything else. As the director, she and other agents must unconditionally execute the orders issued by Fury. So Syria immediately summoned all agents to remove the equipment of all the agents controlled by Philia and take them away. Her style was vigorous and resolute, and soon, the whole square was completely in control. Fury said to Ophelia at the moment, "Tesseract is in a secret base in California, Furia, I need some time. You only have 3 days to bring the things to Madripoor Harbor, and someone will take over, but more than 3 days." He didn't say it completely, but Nick Fury understood the meaning very well. "I understand. After the Lord comes, I will personally go to Madrid port with Tesseract. Ophelia smiled lightly and snapped her fingers. Then she saw Pierce's whole body float up automatically. She took him to the side, and when he took the first step, a golden vortex appeared in front of him. The energy contained in the vortex made Fury feel trembling. He watched Ophelia disappear into the golden vortex with Pierce. Finally, the golden vortex channel healed automatically and returned to its original appearance. Fury stood there with an uncertain expression. Ophelia's brief appearance this time revealed a corner of the veil behind Madrid port in Fury's eyes, but this corner showed its terrifying and mysteriousness. Whether it was strength, tone, movement, or subtle expression, he could see a kind of temperament. That was the high and mighty that came from the bones. The threat of the world's strongest country was like a child's joke in the eyes of the other party. Does this world really have a god? What does this god think of this world? Is it good or bad? Fury's heart was churning, and he felt a sense of powerlessness that had never appeared since he became the director. Whether he was willing to admit it or not, he knew that those thoughts in the past were too self-righteous. Controlling the world and maintaining a stable balance were just lies and deceptions. Hydra grew stronger by parasitizing SHIELD. Fury didn't need to think about it to know how much Hydra had done secretly with the help of SHIELD. How many Hydras were lurking in the military? Political circles? How many high-ranking government officials came from Hydra? He didn't know. Just thinking about it made Fury's back cold. But Fury was not hit, and he didn't think of giving up. Instead, this time, Fury saw an opportunity to completely clean up S.H.I.E.L.D. and control SHIELD. He knew he couldn't control the Madripoor port, and he didn't have the courage to do so. But at least, he needed a clean SHIELD that belonged to him. Fury turned around and strode towards the Trident building. Chapter 61. 3 days later. Tesseract, the Tesseract that set the tone for major events in the timeline of Earth's history, appeared in Leon's hands. Just as Ophelia thought, Leon never thought of ruling the Earth, not because he was not ambitious enough. The population of the Earth was destined to be unable to give enough faith to this tiny place. The role of the Earth was simply to provide him with orphans during the initial stage of lack of faith, to collect and absorb them, and to cultivate them. He needed to establish a kingdom of God similar to Asgard, but more macroscopic than Asgard. With this kingdom of God as the main body, promote theocracy and develop to all surrounding galaxies and even other parallel worlds. And Leon knew that the Earth was the center of the entire multidimensional conflict, and all kinds of powerful gods and demons from other dimensions would set their sights here in the future. He would not do anything thankless, and it was obviously the best choice to stand aside and watch. As for Tesseract, the name seemed to be only one word different from another cosmic cube, but in fact, it was very different, and there was no comparison at all. Tesseract is just a container that Space Gem generates to protect itself. It seems indestructible, but it is limited to humans. Facing a truly powerful person, this thing is extremely fragile. Bang! In the backyard of his home, Leon crushed the container of Time Gem with his hands, and the terrifying azure energy suddenly burst out. However, before it spread, it was annihilated by Leon. Countless broken crystals appeared in his palm, and there was a Time Gem with a blue halo in it. Gently blowing away the crystal fragments, Leon, who was holding the Time Gem, could feel that the violent and unstable power in it was ready to move, as if it was about to explode at any time. But Leon snorted coldly, and the terrifying breath flashed away, and the originally manic Time Gem immediately became obedient. Leon was satisfied with the obedience of this little thing. He held it and perceived the unique rules of space. Infinite gems are made of the essence of 6 singularities containing infinite energy before the Big Bang. Each gem has its own unique rule power. Space Gem is just as its name suggests. Originally, it possessed unlimited energy and could manipulate space at will, such as separation, cutting, twisting or reordering, or even creating new space. Leon didn't care about the unlimited huge energy. What really concerned Leon was the space rule or knowledge contained in it. Ordinary people were not qualified to comprehend and understand this knowledge, but Leon happened to be able to do so. This was of great help to his awakening 8th sense, Alaya consciousness. But at present, it was not very useful. What he needed was to accumulate the microcosm first and accumulate his own microcosm to the limit. This was why he didn't take the initiative to get it back, even though he knew that S.H.I.E.L.D. had Tesseract. Unexpectedly, by mistake, Ophelia got this thing back first. But it was okay. He got it first and kept it for later use. He would take it out when he wanted to break through the awakening eighth sense. The most important thing today was not to get the time gem, but to celebrate his mother Amy's birthday. She was already 39 years old this year. In previous years, Amy didn't care about birthdays, because she always felt that she was 1 year older after each passing year, and birthdays were undoubtedly a blow to her girlish heart. But now it's different. After injecting the improved version of the gene serum, the whole person is more beautiful, coordinated, and fair than when she was young. What's more, there is Leon, and life is just a number. Let the eternal youth, life, and health of countless upper classes on the earth, she is within her reach. So now she doesn't reject birthday parties. Amy doesn't like to make a big fuss. She prefers to be with her family. So this year's birthday party, Amy decided to go back to her grandfather's house with her grandparents. Grandparents are now in Culmers County, Alabama. Alabama is a state in the southeastern United States, bordering Tennessee to the north, Georgia to the east, Florida to the south, and the Gulf of Mexico. The capital is Montgomery, and it governs 67 counties. Agriculture is very developed. Grandparents live on a farm in Culmers County. Grandpa and Grandma run a farm and ranch, which together cover about 3,000 acres. The main crops on the farm are soybeans, wheat, corn, and buckwheat. They have 185 cows and 8 bulls, all of which are beef cattle. 0. The total value of all the property, including the farm, ranch, house, livestock, agricultural machinery, etc., is about $1.2 million US. It can be said that Leon's ancestors are very wealthy. Every year, the family goes back many times, but in recent years, due to Leon's own reasons, the number of visits has decreased a lot. For this reason, Grandpa Greg and Grandma Angela called to complain to their parents. The old couple miss their 2 grandchildren so much. This year, they happen to go back, and Leon is also going to inject super serum into the old couple. After all, the old couple, who are nearly 70 years old, are getting worse year by year. 00 Amy's cry came from the house, and Jiang put the time gem back into the magic storage space. Dad and Mom are now in high spirits, and with fashionable and casual clothes, they look young, handsome, and beautiful. They don't look like people in their 40s at all. For this reason, friends in the town are envious and jealous, and they ask if there is any secret of maintenance. Especially Dad, with his broad muscular body, the single women in the town are all fascinated by him, which makes Mom jealous. Definitely she is not much better, and there are a lot of male teachers in the school pursuing her. Little Lily and Dean are dressed very beautifully. The former wears a white dress and a pink flower in her hair. She looks like a little princess in a fairy tale, cute and delicate. Dean looks very handsome, wearing a pink hooded sweater with white collar and cuffs, which looks neat and clean. Leon wears a simple gray shirt, the smooth lines highlight his neatness and competence, a pair of dark blue jeans, fashionable and youthful, and his every move is elegant. Leon opens the portal casually. With his powerful perception ability, he accurately located the deserted place outside his grandparents' farm, crossing several states in 1 second. Chapter 62. The whole family, including 2 big dogs, appeared in front of the grandparents, and the 2 old people were full of surprise and joy. Although my mother Amy had called to inform them long ago, I didn't expect the family to arrive at the farm early in the morning. Grandparents. The moment Lily and Dean saw their grandparents, they immediately jumped for joy and ran to them with their short legs. Wow, look who's here, my little princess and little prince. The grandfather was nearly 1.9 meters tall. Although he was old and had white hair, he was still very strong because of hunting and farm life since he was a child. When he saw the 2 cute little guys, he was full of joy and held the 2 little guys in his arms. The grandmother was also 1.7 meters tall. Although her face was still vicissitudes and wrinkles, her facial features could vaguely see her former glory. The grandmother was very happy. The family hugged the grandmother one by one, especially when they saw Leon, who was getting more and more handsome. She held Leon's hand and didn't let go. The house of the grandparents was well built and had a large area. It was a 2-story villa similar to a single-family house. Not far away were stables and sheep and cattle houses, etc., and the furniture was complete. The happy unlimited family enjoyed a good time. But outside, the world was changing, and a bloody storm was brewing. In a cathedral in Jelgava, Latvia, Europe, in a gorgeous and bright conference room, several figures were sitting at a round table, looking at the head on the round table with an ugly face. This head came from Alexander Pierce, who was also a senior leader of Hydra. Looking at Pierce's head, the atmosphere was extreme. No one spoke for a long time. One of the men in a suit, who looked like a descendant of aristocrats, spoke first. No one wants to say something. What? Should we recite a prayer for him, Zima? Another middle-aged white man wearing glasses and a suit said coldly. She betrayed Hydra, she is a traitor. Not far away, the white-haired old man holding a Hydra cane was full of anger, and his eyes swept across the crowd. I will never allow anyone to betray Hydra, she deserves to die. She has done something beyond the limit, Zima, Hall White, we must unite to eliminate the traitor. Eliminate? Tell me, Gideon Malik, how are you going to kill her? The man named Zima had a very magnetic voice, and he said slowly. She has a god behind her, you want to be an enemy of a god. God. Malik, who was holding a Hydra cane, was furious, and his voice was several times louder. We only have one god, that is the hive that founded Hydra. The so-called god behind Viper is just a small field full of lies and fraud. His anger was like a flame, as if he wanted to burn everyone here to ashes. But the other few people couldn't even keep up the disguise. Hall White adjusted his glasses and said indifferently, then call Hive over and kill Viper and the god behind her. But you know very well that the so-called god Hive in your heart is just a loser who was exiled. Malik, you want to continue your Far-Star plan, and no one will stop you, but now, we have reached the critical point of life and death, and nonsense can't save us. His blunt words made Malik even more furious, but under Hall White's cold eyes behind his glasses, he calmed down again. First it was Wolfgang von Strucker, then Pierce, who will be next? Hall White swept his eyes around the crowd, and finally set his sights on one of the expressionless and burly men, Brock Rumlow. Now that Pierce is dead, you have taken over part of his power, what do you think? We are all exposed. Nick Fury launched a cleansing plan in 3 days. Most of the power was cleared, and only a small part of the power was taken away by me. Before facing Viper and the one behind him, everyone should think about how we should deal with you, Nick Fury. Brock Rumlow said after a moment of silence. He still has the power to come to us. Zima frowned. The consequence of underestimating him is only death. His skills are more terrible than you think. Even the leader once said that Nick Fury is a natural agent king. What the hell? The rest of the people had a headache just thinking about it. Just as Hall White said, everyone was now in a life-or-death situation. The reason they were able to develop to this day was because they were lurking. The whole world thought that Hydra was gone, so they were able to hide behind the scenes. But when they were exposed, they were met with a thunderbolt. As Hydra, they knew too well what Hydra meant to the leaders of countries around the world. It was even more Nazi than the Nazis. Once Nick Fury revealed it, the LU Kingdom would unite all forces to wipe them out at the first opportunity. Not to mention that there was a Viper who was eyeing them covetously. Then lurk again. Zima made a proposal. It is nothing more than giving up part of the power, leading the elite remnants to escape, and continue to develop in secret. Although it is necessary to cut flesh and bones, this is the only most suitable way. The eyes of the others flickered and they were silent, but the silence had expressed their attitude. Brock Rumlow did not express his opinion at all. With his current strength, he was already authorized to participate in this high-level meeting. However, at this moment, the door was suddenly opened, and as a figure entered, a slightly hoarse 5.0 female voice came into everyone's ears. Is this what you think? This is the leader who leads countless Hydra soldiers? Hydra never needs cowards. Everyone stood up suddenly and looked towards the door. Under the light, a tall woman with short red hair and a coat strode in front of everyone. When they saw the woman's face, everyone's pupils shrank suddenly. Cynthia Schmidt? You are still alive. Zima shouted the woman's name out of shock. Everyone's expression was full of shock, as if they had never expected that the woman could be alive. This is simply unbelievable. I ate the wrong food and had vomiting and diarrhea. I will trouble the store for this. Takeaway. Chapter 63. Cynthia Schmidt. In the early days of World War II, countless bloody storms were set off on the European battlefield, forcing the US government to launch the Super Soldier program, attempting to create a super soldier army to fight against the fascist army. John Schmidt, the focus of the entire World War II, is also the daughter of Red Skull, one of the leaders of Hydra. It is said that Cynthia Schmidt is a daughter secretly born by Red Skull, but when she was very young, because she was a girl, not the boy that Red Skull expected, he was angry and drowned the girl because Red Skull believed that the girl was too weak to keep up with him. For some unknown reason, Cynthia Schmidt survived and was active in World War II with the support of Red Skull. But with the defeat of Red Skull, Cynthia Schmidt also disappeared. Everyone thought she died in a corner of the world. Hall White and others were able to recognize her by her appearance because there were pictures of Red Skull and her in the internal data. They look exactly the same, even the Nazi female officer uniforms they wear are exactly the same. But how is this possible? A person from World War II should be close to 70 years old now, but she doesn't look like a 70-year-old now. Moreover, the other party suddenly appeared in their parliament, and the defense measures they set up outside did not move at all. How did she do it? While everyone frowned and thought, Cynthia Schmidt was wearing a female Nazi uniform, with an upright body, and her aggressive wildness was like a cheetah on the hunt. Her eyes were shining with a faint cold light and scanning the whole audience, looking down on people, which was highly similar to her father. "You make me feel ashamed," Cynthia Schmidt said in a cold tone, reprimanding the people present mercilessly. "Who do you think you are? Even if Red Skull is here, he has no right to talk to me in such a tone." Malik hit back strongly. In his mind, Red Skull was also a 01 traitor, so naturally he looked down on his daughter, not to mention that the other party showed such a condescending attitude. Cynthia turned her head to look at the old man with the Hydra cane, smiling, "Dean Malik, a conservative, who wants to welcome back the so-called God Hive, a product of an experiment, a ridiculous old guy. But I think you got one thing wrong, Malik, you don't even have the qualifications to look directly at my father. Now, get off." Silence, the scene fell into endless silence, and several people present looked at each other. Malik's face flushed with what Cynthia said, and he couldn't suppress his anger in the end, and shouted, "Come here, kill this woman for me, I want to chop off her head with my own hands and crush it bit by bit in front of Red Skull's grave." But there was no response from outside the door. Malik finally reacted. His anger was completely extinguished as if he had been poured with a basin of cold water. He looked at Cynthia with a look of contempt and surprise. "What did you do? They know who they should be loyal to, old man." Cynthia snapped her fingers, and footsteps came from outside the door. A group of fully armed soldiers rushed in, all pointing their guns at everyone present. Brock Rumlow's eyes moved, Moser had a blank expression, Hall White took off his glasses, took out a cloth to wipe the lenses, but in the end no one made any abnormal movements. Malik was so angry that he trembled all over, because he saw that some of these soldiers were diehards he brought with him. "What do you want? Madam Sin, if you want to catch us all in one fell swoop and integrate Hydra, then I can tell you clearly that you can't do it." After a moment of silence, Zima spoke. "You are very smart, Baron." Cynthia smiled, "But you are wrong, I do want to integrate Hydra, as you said, Hydra is now on the verge of extinction, I want to complete my father's ideals, so Hydra cannot die. But you can't do it." Zima shook his head, not to mention that several forces are spread all over the world, and their entanglements are too complicated. It is not so easy to unify and integrate. At least he thinks Cynthia can't do it, not to mention that the current situation is extremely unfavorable. "I really can't do it now, but I think there is something that can help me, Baron." "I'm happy to listen." "The Book of Skulls." Cynthia gently uttered a name, which made Zima's face suddenly change. Others were full of doubts, as if they had never heard of the Book of Skulls. "You actually know this thing?" Zima said in a deep voice. "I am Red Skull's daughter. How could you think I don't know the Book of Skulls?" Cynthia asked back, leaving Zima speechless. Then she stared at Cynthia. "Baron, you seem to know this thing too. It seems that you do know where it is, right? On March 9, 1942, your father Red Skull launched a war against the Norwegian city of Tunsberg, bloodbathed the entire city, found the Tesseract in a small town church, and stole a book, the Book of Skulls. But the Book of Skulls has been completely missing since Red Skull's demise, and no one has ever found it." After Zima's narration, the other Hydra executives suddenly realized that Tesseract was one of the main causes of turmoil in World War II. It was precisely because of the use of Tesseract that the Hydra Corps developed energy weapons, which once spread fear throughout the European continent. Can be used by Red Skull, and the Book of the Skull would obviously not be that easy. "But you found it, didn't you?" Cynthia smiled gently. I did find the place, but I couldn't get it. I think it should be waiting for its owner. Yes, originally only my father was qualified to get it. Now, I am the new Red Skull. I can take you there, but I have to keep some of my own power. Zima made a very decisive statement without any hesitation, or it could be said to be a deal. As for other people, he didn't care at all. In the future, you will be grateful for your current choice, Baron Zima. Cynthia agreed and made a promise, there is only one God in this world, and you will become God's most trusted assistant. Devil, that is a demon, God, please save us. I don't want to die, please save me. Eddie, don't give up on me. Ha 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 ha, the end of the world is coming, the end of the world is coming. Boom. 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 The flames of destruction spread across the entire earth. All over the world, in every city, every corner, all populated places, the horrible killing is continuing, people are fleeing madly with fear, blood flows like the sea, under the firelight, you can see the dead figures lying on the ground, the body parts everywhere. The heavy snow makes the earth turn into a cold winter, and the world seems to be at the end of the world. A huge snake-like monster with a body that can wrap around the earth, a figure holding a hammer, creating a killing frenzy one after another, spreading fear everywhere, hideous and terrible. But at the moment, the pictures are frozen, constantly stretched, and finally reflected in Thor's eyes. Thor suddenly sat up from the bed, and took off the thin white gauze covering his body, revealing his strong and streamlined muscles. He was panting, and his eyes were full of surprise. Beside him, a pair of blue-skinned slender arms wrapped around his thick waist. What's wrong with you, Thor? Did you have a nightmare? I saw the disaster, Star. Thor turned his head and looked at the blue-skinned woman behind him who was also naked. His tone was unprecedentedly serious, destiny is guiding me. I'm leaving. I thought we would spend every night beautifully. Yes, Star, but you know I am Thor. I have the blood of the Odinson family flowing in my body and the honor of Asgard. My duty is to protect the 9 kingdoms. I am an Asgardian and a warrior. I can't tolerate myself choosing to retreat when I see the disaster. Thor hugged the woman and said gently and firmly, I believe you will understand me. I long to enjoy the beauty with you every day and night. Wait for me to come back. I will wait for you, always wait for you, Syndrome. The woman looked at Thor admiringly. The only eye on her head was full of reluctance, but she still gave him a gentle kiss. Thor walked down from the bed. The woman held the white veil draped on her body in one hand, and just watched the man she loved walk forward quietly. In an open space, she looked up at the sky and shouted, Heimdall. Boom. A colorful beam of light fell from the sky, covering Thor. Thor was wrapped in electric light, wearing a scale-covered armor and a bright red cape. He looked like a god, majestic and sacred. Finally, Thor left the land of comfort and his 199th lover. He returned to Asgard. In a blink of an eye, Thor walked out of the Bifrost passage, and what came into view was a magnificent and wide building. In front of him stood a tall man in armor holding a guardian sword inserted on the operating table on the 7-story steps. He was the Asgardian of Asgard Bifrost, Heimdall. Thor, I thought you would come back later. Heimdall released the guardian sword and walked down the steps of the platform. He always had an expressionless face, but his tone was mixed with some jokes. But unfortunately, Thor was not in the mood to joke with Heimdall at the moment. Instead, he looked at Heimdall seriously and said, Heimdall, I dreamed of a disaster. Disaster. Heimdall immediately adjusted his mindset. As a Bifrost Asgardian, he knew very well what incredible power the people of the Odinson family had. Prophecy dreams are also one of the abilities. Thor had dreamed of many things that would happen, including some wars, and therefore Thor avoided those wars many times with foresight. I believe this time is no exception. Fear, I saw the 9 realms spread by fear, the flames of war, the bones and blood everywhere, this fear will sweep the entire 9 realms, Heimdall. Thor's voice was low, but it contained worry. I believe you very much, Thor, but now the 9 kingdoms are still in a period of peace. No, this fear has no signs, it spreads too fast, we must find a way to find the source of this fear disaster in advance. What do you want to do? The serpent. Thor looked at Heimdall and read out a name that made Heimdall pale. The latter repeated it in a lost voice, and his voice also increased a few points, the serpent. It seems that you know the serpent. This is a past that should be buried, Thor, are you sure? Heimdall frowned, his expression was extremely ugly. Definitely, I saw the serpent covering the sky and the sun, it was an indescribable power, I saw death from it, and the world ended because of it. Thor nodded and expressed his affirmation. If it is really the serpent, then I think we are in trouble, Thor, it will plunge the 9 kingdoms into darkness and fear. What exactly is the serpent? Why haven't I heard of it? Thor interrupted Heimdall. Heimdall ignored him and continued to speak in a deep voice, the big snake is also called Kol. He was once a member of the Odinson family and the God King before Odin. Walter? Shouldn't the previous generation of God King be my grandfather, or Odinson? Thor asked in disbelief. No, the next generation heir of King Bor is the great snake, Kol, he is the elder brother of your father Odin, he was once called the god of terror, because he was too cruel, he could absorb other people's fear to enhance his own strength, which made him lose his mind, spread fear to the 9 realms, and tried to become the most powerful god king in Asgard's history. Finally, he was defeated and sealed by your father Odin. This history is very long, and it was sealed by God Odin, so few people know it. With my father's seal, the great snake is still possible to break free? How is this possible? Thor expressed his disbelief. He believed in Odin's greatness. Even if the great snake was strong, it would not be defeated by Odin? Thor, you can't imagine the fear of that period. The power of the great snake is far beyond your and my cognition. I need to talk to the father. God Odin is now in deep sleep. Thor is numb, falling into deep sleep at this time? It's not a big problem. Yesterday was an accident. Today and in the next period of time, I will burst out and strive for 20,000 words a day. Chapter 64. The sky was blue and the sun was shining. Leon wore a long round cowboy hat and a hard leather jacket, a standard cowboy outfit. He just lay on the lawn with his hands behind his head, enjoying the combination of fresh wind and warm sunshine. Not far away, you can hear the barking of cows, sheep, and dogs, and definitely the excited shouts of little babies. It was a leisurely afternoon. Leon held a dogtail grass in his mouth, an array of slanting sun sprinkled on his face. The round hat just left a shadow on his eyes, blocking the sunlight. A beautiful and quiet day can make people drowsy. Leon couldn't sleep because he was preparing to do something big, which was to evaporate the divine calendar in the fantasy crystal again. Since the last evaporation, the continuous accumulation of divine power has been more than the last time. It must be said that the blood of Athena that was materialized last time gave him great benefits. 1,000th of the blood made his body and soul immortal, and the huge knowledge gave him the capital to train the guards. In addition, the remaining divine blood is naturally used to upgrade the gold armor to a divine armor. There is no doubt that the divine armor can enhance one's combat power. It must be said that the surprise and expectation brought by the evaporation of fantasy divine power every time, even Leon, who is now like this, can't help but feel it. He didn't make any movements, and the surrounding space suddenly changed. From the perspective of the outside world, he was still lying on the lawn to rest, but in fact his body was completely isolated from the real world and was in a parallel world. With a thought, the fantasy divine power suddenly began to evaporate. In an instant, the sky changed, and the blue sky bloomed with more dazzling stars. Countless stars twinkled, forming a series of incomparable patterns, dazzling, brilliant, sacred, and gorgeous. Leon suddenly stood up, looking up, his eyes flickering, his expression was joyful and surprised. Boom! 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 The stars turned into beams of light and fell down, and finally turned into bronze, silver, and gold light balls, just like the stars guarding fixed star, circling around him, rotating, and even producing an inexplicable vibration and resonance. Leon could even feel the intimacy conveyed by these light balls. When the light faded, you could see bronze, silver, and gold boxes floating and rotating quietly, and finally fell to the ground. The closest ones were 12 gold boxes, followed by 24 silver boxes and 48 bronze boxes. Imaginary divine power materialized the remaining 88 holy clothes. This made Leon both surprised and surprised. He was surprised that all the holy clothes were fully materialized, which meant that he could completely cultivate complete bronze, silver, and gold sequence saints. At the same time, he was even more surprised that this was the third time. Except for the first time when at least the power of fantasy materialized into senzu beans, the second time was the Aquarius Gold Cloth, the third time was the blood of Athena, and this time it was all the Shin cloth, Could it be that the materialization was not random, but had some inexplicable connection? Or was it just a coincidence? If it is the latter, it is too coincidental. This thought did not last long, because up to now, Leon has not analyzed the characteristics of the fantasy crystal with perception. It is like something that has no connection with this universe and the world. Although in its soul world, if you want to get close, analyze, and touch it, you will not get any results. To put it bluntly, this thing is an existence that he cannot understand. At least now at his current level, it is out of reach. Regardless of whether it is a coincidence, at least one thing is that the appearance of 88 holy clothes saved him some trouble. The reason why he called the cultivated legion the guards instead of the Saint Caea Corps is because of the holy clothes. The reason why the Saint Caea is called the Saint Caea is that it is recognized by the holy clothes and recognized by the goddess. Definitely now it is recognized by him. In the knowledge contained in Athena's blood, there is actually how to make holy clothes. The 88 constellations shining in the sky appeared according to Athena's thinking and ideas. Based on the constellations, the alchemists used mountain copper, gammamanian, and silver star sand to create them. Therefore, the holy clothes all have their own exclusive constellations. If you want to obtain the holy clothes, you must have the same guardian constellation and the recognition of the goddess. In this universe, those three materials do not exist at all, but everything has similarities. With Athena's knowledge, he can completely use other materials to replace them, but the materials to be replaced are very rare, and it is not easy to collect them. At least one of them can be replaced. Leon has only one cognitive ability, which is the Uru metal from Asgard, which is also a metal material unique to God. As for the vibranium on Earth, which is commonly known as sound-absorbing steel, it is not qualified to be replaced, let alone adamantium. However, it is possible to use these three known metals to create a higher-level combat suit, but it does not have the unique self-awareness and evolution function of the holy clothes. In this universe, Leon is a completely low-profile version of Athena. Due to the materialization, he has the knowledge that Athena has, and he will continue to grow in the future. He can even replace Athena according to imagination and rules, create more constellations, and create more holy clothes. By then, there will not only be 13 gold saints, but dozens, hundreds, thousands, or even tens of thousands. After all, bronze saints can also upgrade themselves. With the continuous evolution of their own microcosms, they can eventually upgrade to gold saints, or even higher level saints. That is definitely a later story. Now, the materialization of the saints has helped him solve some of the early problems. Fantasy crystal is really considerate. Leon even suspected that the fantasy crystal was also interesting, the senzu beans, the Aquarius Gold Cloth that completely resonated with him and omitted the identification step, and the subsequent divine blood, the 88 saint clothes that appeared now. Conspiracy theory or something, Leon didn't think about it, but just buried this fleeting thought in his heart. He believed that when his life level continued to rise, he would be able to analyze the essence of this fantasy crystal one day. Leon paced and looked at the saint clothes, and finally his eyes fell on one of the 12 golden boxes in front of him, which was also the most special one. Originally, he had a gold saint cloth on him. There should be only 11 of all the saint cloths in the gold sequence, but in fact there was one more, and this gold saint cloth was Ophiuchus. The Ophiuchus gold saint cloth is a saint cloth outside the 12 gold sequences. Ophiuchus was originally one of the silver saint cloths, it was a silver saint cloth, but before that, there was an Ophiuchus silver saint Caea, and in the mythological era, 10 special people appeared. Odysseus, the son of Apollo, the sun god, and Coronis, the princess of Thessaly, is a great and merciful existence like a god. He behaves noble, uses his medical skills to heal all the injured, saves people from illness, and can even bring the dead back to life. Unknowingly, he is called a god by the world. Over time, Ophiuchus believes that he is equal to the gods, but when his real intention is to go from a man to a god, this challenge to the authority of the gods angers the gods. The Ophiuchus gold saint was expelled from the sanctuary, and even his existence disappeared. The golden constellation he represented was also erased, and Ophiuchus was reborn as the silver saint cloth. Who will be recognized by you? Leon's eyes flashed with golden light, but he did not choose to put on the Ophiuchus constellation. As mentioned before, he is very special. Since the saint clothes are all materialized by fantasy crystals, when they appear, they resonate and connect with him. He is the owner of these saint clothes, not the constellation that needs to be protected. That is, he is the owner of the saint clothes. If necessary, he can wear any gold saint clothes present, because Athena's blood power contains all the knowledge of the saint CE's ultimate skills, and he can perfectly exert the power of all saint clothes. But the pattern is different. He does not need to treat these saint clothes as collections like collector. On the contrary, he knows very well that the essence of these saint clothes is just armor and weapons. Will Athena care about the saint clothes? No, because these saint clothes are just armor she made for her warriors. He is the same. What he wants is to be strong in himself. The knowledge in Athena's blood and the microcosm are the foundation of strength. Stinginess is extremely stupid whether from the perspective of humans or gods. Buzz buzz, as if I heard Leon's expectation, the Aquarius gold box vibrated slightly, as if in response, making Leon laugh. Then go, wait for your master to call. Leon stretched out his finger and raised it to the sky. Chirp chirp chirp. 88 bronze, silver and gold boxes suddenly turned into three-color light and rushed into the sky, disappearing into the sky above the constellation and hiding. When they sensed the master that suits them, they would explode in that small universe to give a response. Leon, what are you doing pointing at the sky? Do you just want to poke a hole in the sky? Please, let the poor sky go. I don't want to have a hole in the sky. Will it fall on the earth? Come and help quickly. From afar, the grandfather's full-bodied shout came. Obviously, he saw Leon standing on the lawn, with his right index finger raised high and pointing to the sky, like a dragon arrogant. Okay, I'll come. Leon was so thick-skinned that he didn't care at all. He said something casually and walked towards his grandfather. The space flowed, and in an instant, his body completed the transition between parallel and reality. Odin, how is this possible? In the high-rise corridor of a building in the magnificent Asgard, a fat and bearded man looked at Thor in front of him with disbelief. He sat on the stone pier, with a height of 100 meters behind him. He looked at the city below from a bird's-eye view. The majestic wind blew and the scenery was picturesque. No one was flat in such a beautiful scenery. Because all of them looked at Thor in surprise at the moment. Although I don't want to admit it, believe me, my brothers. Thor nodded seriously, looking at the group of brothers in front of him, Sif, the three warriors of Asgard, Volstagg, Fandral, Hagun, and his closest brother, Loki. For countless years, he has led these close companions and experienced hundreds of battles. The relationship between them has long exceeded the relationship between princes and generals. He will not hide many things from his brothers. This time is no exception, because he knows that when he needs help, they will give everything without reservation, including their lives. Thor, you know this is not an ordinary trivial matter, and we have never heard of the big snake. The only female warrior Sif frowned, with some hesitation on her heroic and beautiful face. She was not questioning Thor. On the contrary, she believed in Thor like everyone else, but this matter was far beyond their ability. After all, according to Thor, this is a disaster and war that swept across the 9 kingdoms. It is not a trivial matter, and it must be truly confirmed. I found such a description in the history of Asgard, but it was very simple and vague. It should be intentionally vague by my father. Thor usually looks reckless and arrogant, but he has brains and can guess some things through some information. The God King is now in deep sleep, or Thor, you should ask the God Queen. Sif suggested, but Thor immediately gave an answer, I have looked for it. My mother told me to believe in myself. She said that any choice I make will guide my future destiny. It was also a vague answer. But everyone present believed it, because the god Queen Frigga, as Odin's wife, also had great power. She was like a goddess who guided destiny. The answer was only a vague hint, and they didn't need to find the answer themselves. Loki, who had been silent all the time, had beautiful black curly long hair and a handsome and pale face. He looked at his brother seriously, in the picture you dreamed of, is there anything else? Other things? Thor looked at his brother in confusion. Loki shook his head, you don't think Midgard is simple, do you? Although Midgard was once backward and ignorant, I have recently investigated some information. 11 What information? Fandral, one of the 3 warriors of Asgard, touched his neatly trimmed mustache and asked. Chapter 65 Thor, do you remember the last time Heimdall reported the abnormally strong energy fluctuations and traces of demons in Midgard? Loki did not give a direct answer, but looked at Thor. The latter recalled a little and remembered, we tried to ask the father to go to Midgard for investigation, but was stopped by the father. Yes, that time, I was very confused about why the father did this, so I conducted some investigations on Midgard and found some interesting information. Loki nodded. No one knew his heart. As a descendant of the Odinson family and Thor's younger brother, he did not get the respect he thought he deserved. Everything about him was covered by the light of Thor. Thor was like a fixed star burning with flames, and he was just one of the slightly brighter satellites guarding this fixed star. Even if his light was brighter than other satellites, so what? He would never be as bright as this fixed star, or so it seemed to others. This made Loki very dissatisfied. He was proud and conceited in his bones. He thought he was no worse than Thor. Thor was indeed very powerful. He was a powerful and fearless warrior with a strong personal charm. In every war, he would lead the troops with thunder and inspire all the warriors with an impassioned voice. Everyone admired him, fell in love with him, and died for him. But Loki thought that such a Thor would never have the possibility of becoming a king. The most important thing for a king to rule a country should be wisdom. When he was a child, he could play tricks on Thor. He thought that his wisdom was higher than everyone else. But no one would agree with this view, so it was spread that Thor would definitely become the next god king. As the current god king, Odin did not refute it, but acquiesced, so that Loki was full of negative emotions towards everyone, and this emotion slowly grew over time. So he had a lot of small thoughts. For example, the abnormal time of Midgard and Odin's abnormal behavior in his opinion last time made Loki think that there must be something hidden, so he violated Odin's order and investigated Midgard. Loki was definitely not stupid enough to go to Midgard in person. Even if he could go to Midgard secretly, he could not escape Hymir's eyes. That eagle-like sharp eyes covered the entire 9 realms, and Loki's deception magic had little effect on it. So he secretly sent people to Midgard to investigate. He didn't know the result until he investigated. He found that the country that he once thought was backward and ignorant was now growing and developing, and some interesting people appeared. Especially the famous people who appeared in recent years. The so-called god. Loki told what he investigated, very straightforward, and with some of his special expressions. Everyone, including Thor, felt that he seemed to be hiding something. God. Thor was not particularly sensitive to this word. As an Asgardian, his identity was God. He also knew that there were many gods in this world. In addition to Asgard and Olympus, there were various Asgardians. Those Asgardians had powerful power and authority and could be called gods. It's just that this god came from Midgard, a territory ruled by Asgard, which made Thor feel a little weird. Is your dream related to this so-called god? Loki put forward his own idea. Let everyone think about it. Thor pondered for a moment. It's possible that my dream included Midgard, and the tragic scene is still vivid in my mind. Thinking of that scene, Thor, who had experienced a sea of blood and corpses, couldn't help but frown. It was too miserable. And the strange energy and demons that Heimdall saw that time were extremely close to the time when Loki investigated the appearance of that god. I think I must go to Midgard in person to investigate. Thor made up his mind. Thor, you know that King Odin has expressly forbidden you to investigate this matter. Sif tried to stop him. She didn't want Thor to do this because she was afraid that it would anger Odin and she would be punished. Sif, you know I have to do this for the stability of the 9 realms. Besides, the Father God is in deep sleep and I can't report these things to him. I believe that if the Father God wakes up and knows these things, he won't stop me. Thor looked at Sif and said in a low voice. Looking directly at Thor's bright gem-like eyes, Sif sighed silently. Okay, I'll go with you. No, Sif, I need you to stay in Asgard and wait until the Father God wakes up, and then you report the dream I foresaw to God. Thor shook his head. Sif's expression immediately became unhappy. This idiot really didn't know anything. But she didn't refuse. I know. Volstagg, Fondrel, Hogon, my brothers, I need you to stand in the legion. Once the big snake I dreamed of breaks through the seal of the Father God and the war starts, I need you to lead the warriors to help me fight the big snake. Understood. Thor said and looked at Loki again. Loki, let's go to Midgard. We will go when the time comes. Now. Thor and Sif, the 3 Asgard warriors, signaled and took Loki out of the building and went to the Bifrost Center. They met Heimdall and asked him to use Bifrost to send him and Loki to Midgard. But Heimdall refused decisively. The reason was simple, not allowed. When he reported the abnormality in Midgard before, Odin had said that he didn't need to pay attention to it and that no one was allowed to go to Midgard, including Thor and Loki. Even with Odin's order, Thor and Loki still violated it and went there. Afterwards, they were punished by Odin. The three of them could not escape responsibility. He was an Asgardian of Bifrost and Odin's most loyal warrior. He would unconditionally execute Odin's orders, and this time was no exception. But Thor seemed to have infectiousness and charm, and he persuaded Heimdall. Even Loki felt extremely incredible. He also knew very well what Heimdall's duties were. Heimdall actually went against Odin's orders to help Thor. This made his inner dissatisfaction even stronger, but as the god of fraud, he hid all his dissatisfaction deep in his heart and did not show it at all. Neither Heimdall nor Thor noticed Loki's dissatisfaction. The two were still talking. Before sending the two to Midgard, Heimdall stood on the control console holding the hilt of the guardian sword and facing the two people below. He said, "Midgard has often erupted many times during this period. Maybe it has something to do with what you said, Thor. Now I will send you to the nearest eruption point." "Thank you, Heimdall." Thor smiled heartily and expressed his gratitude to Heimdall. Heimdall still had no expression on his face. After turning on Bifrost, the brothers stepped into the energy channel and disappeared completely. And Heimdall stood on the central control console. Remembering the voice and order of the god King Odin when Thor tried to convince himself. If it wasn't Odin's order to let him go, he wouldn't be so easily persuaded. "Your Majesty Odin." Heimdall stood like a statue, with a light flickering in his sharp eyes like a falcon, as if he was thinking about the deep meaning behind Odin's order, and also worried about Thor and Loki. Yelena was happy and unhappy recently. The happy part was that she had been subjected to cruel training as a Red House since she was a child, and felt indifference, cruelty and bloodiness in the Red House base. Those knowledge, even teaching with body and beauty at all costs, completely shattered the beautiful fantasy of a 14-year-old girl. She lost her beautiful childhood life, and the beautiful and peaceful campus life was just a luxury. But the happy part was that the Red House disintegrated, and Leon, this great man like a god, took all the girls who graduated and did not graduate, to a new life and found a new direction. They no longer felt indifference and cruelty, and they could go shopping and study like ordinary people. Those black widows who have graduated have changed their names to guards candidates, and they have more smiles on their faces. They have all been injected with the super gene serum developed by the Ministry of Science and Technology, and their bodies have been transformed into super soldiers comparable to the Red Guards. Their skin, body shape, etc. have been optimized, which makes her very envious. Fortunately, not long after, her god needed to train a new guard and give him the power that only gods can have. Many children were chosen, and she was one of them. Her base was located on an island base deep in the Pacific Ocean. This sea area is very wide, and the island group composed of many small islands is not too large, but the sea area is wide and very remote, and there are almost no sailing routes here. To put it bluntly, no one pays attention to it. Here, she began cruel training, which was more intense and more extreme than the Red House. Not only did she have to punch at boulders several times taller than herself every day, she was even required to go into the depths of the sea and face the boundless sea water pressure. But here, she was very happy and fulfilled. Because after training, she could play happily with her friends, eat delicious food, watch TV and clearly feel her growth day by day. Now she can jump more than 10 meters high. Another thing the child mentioned was that Melina had come to see her. When she was a few years old, she, her sister Natasha Romanoff, Melina and Red Guard Alexei once pretended to be a family to perform missions in the United States. During that period of time, the four of them seemed to be really like a family, making her feel a sense of home that she had never had before. It was just a pity that later, Natasha Romanoff defected, and Red Guard Alexei disappeared, saying that he was imprisoned in prison. Melina never saw her again, and everyone seemed to have forgotten her. Everything now seems so beautiful. The only thing that made her unhappy was that Melina came less frequently recently, saying that awakening broke through the sixth sense and needed accumulation. Yelena was happy for Melina and a little envious. The microcosm is the power given to them by God, and only God can master it. Only after awakening the sixth sense of the microcosm can one become a member of the guards. She worships God very much, because she knows that it was the Supreme God who changed her and the fate of the sisters around her, and let them embark on the same path as God, developing Madripoor and saving millions of people. Such a kind God, she swears that she will protect him even if she gives everything. She ability is very good. Among her peers, her growth rate is the fastest in the entire base. But the instructor also said that the microcosm is the feeling after the body and will are tempered to the extreme. Maybe someone can catch up and feel the awakening microcosm. That night, Yelena came to the cliff of the island, wearing a t-shirt and a black jacket, with a gift from Melina on her neck, a small pendant with a photo of her and Melina. Listening to the melodious music from the headphones, she recorded her day in the diary on her lap. At this time, after the Red Room was disbanded, she developed a habit in the school in Madripoor port to record the knowledge she learned and write a diary. Blowing the sea breeze, looking at the moon hanging over the sea at night, it was quiet and peaceful. She enjoyed this quietness and tranquility. But unfortunately, this tranquility was soon broken. She suddenly looked up at the sky in front of her left, and a dazzling colorful light column fell from the sky and landed on the moon-shaped satellite island about 10 miles away. The overwhelming energy within made her heart tremble, and then she suddenly closed the diary on her legs and stood up, her expression extremely serious. Rumble, the light dissipated, dark clouds gathered in the sky, thunder roared, and the raging thunder exploded like a silver snake dancing wildly, covering the moon. The strong wind blew, rolling up the waves layer by layer, hitting the reef. The storm is brewing. The majestic breath spread from the island. Enemy Yelena's mind flashed this thought, and just as she was about to turn around and run to the base to report, she felt a more terrifying strong wind coming from the island base, and a wave of more terrifying and violent momentum rushed into the sky, almost blowing away the dark clouds in the sky. The next moment, a series of figures like meteors rushed into the sky from the base and flew towards the moon satellite. She raised her head and looked in that direction. The angry shout of the chief instructor Selina came to my ears, "You are courting death if you trespass into the base." Boom! Explosive energy bloomed from the sky, and bright meteors swept towards the island. Chapter 66. Boom! 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 The raging sonic fist turned into a meteor and fell, and the endless thunder in the moon satellite island exploded. The explosions and roars completely broke the originally peaceful sea area. The terrible air waves surged and hit all directions. Even if they were more than 10 miles apart, Yelena had to use both hands to block in front of her, and her feet were nailed to the spot and slid back a distance. Feeling the huge impact in person, Yelena was shocked. With her current physical fitness, she believed that the Black Widows who had been injected with super gene serum were not as good as herself, but more than 10 miles apart, the aftermath of the collision of power could almost blow her away. This was no longer a realm that mortals could reach. This had reached the level of a god-level battle. Yelena blocked in front of her with both hands, not taking a step back, just nailed in place, looking forward with difficulty through the gap between her arms. This level of battle, she must not miss it. After experiencing the cruelty of the Red Room, she and her sisters who came out of the Red Room all knew the importance of strength. Not only her, but also the children who were resting, chatting, and reading in the dormitory of the base all ran out. Standing on the wide field and looking into the distance, the base was built on the high ground of the island, which was considered to be the higher side of the island. Except for the mountains on both sides, the front was basically unobstructed, all sea, and naturally the battle of the Moon Bay satellite island in the distance could be seen at a glance. A group of children watched seriously and excitedly. Fear? Afraid? There was no fear at all, not to mention that there were 4 or 5 instructors guarding around them. Even if there was no fear, they believed that when they really faced the crisis of death, their gods would come to save them. Instructor Lisa, what happened? Is there an enemy invasion? Yes, Instructor Lisa. Aren't you going to go with Instructor Selina to drive out and eliminate the invaders? The children chattered at the instructors. After getting along for so long, the children also knew the instructors' tempers. During training, these instructors were as harsh as the devil, but when not training, they were a group of beautiful and kind big sisters. If you have any questions, go to them, they will answer them kindly. Gentle, cute. These children generally have bad experiences, and their minds are more mature, especially in getting along with people. They are also the most sensitive. It is easy to tell whether a person is sincere or pretending. Naturally, they will not be afraid of them, but only love and respect them. The instructor called Lisa is a beautiful black short-haired girl of Eastern European descent in her 20s, with fair skin and delicate and beautiful appearance. She is the youngest among the instructors. At the moment she looked towards the island, and a red light flashed in her beautiful eyes, sharp and vigilant. Like a female leopard protecting her children. Facing the children's chattering, she responded gently and seriously. We don't know whether it is an enemy or not, but the other party must pay a price for invading the base wantonly. The other party should not be from Earth. After saying that, regardless of the children's amazed and excited expressions and discussions, she looked at the other instructors and nodded silently. The small universe in her body slowly burned, and a thin layer of flame covered the surface of her body, and her vigilance was pulled to the highest level. With the same sixth sense, Lisa and her group of instructors sensed the huge energy the moment the other party appeared. It's just that the colorful light column fell too fast, and the other party actually burst out his power without concealing it, which also made them completely mark him as an invader. From the collision with Selina and the others now, it seems that the other party is not weak. Lisa and the other instructors are afraid of luring the tiger away from the mountain. Their duty is to protect these children. Boom! 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 Above the Moon Bay satellite island, Selina and the other female instructors who hit the sonic punch mercilessly felt that the opponent's power was very strong in this wave of confrontation, and their delicate facial features were all cold. Ignoring the aftershocks of the collision, they turned into meteorites and fell to the bottom of the island. They fell on the ground, but the ground was not cracked by the force of the fall, showing the subtle control of power by Selina and her friends. They dispersed into a siege formation, dozens of meters apart. In the middle area, through the diffuse dust and the bursting lightning, they clearly saw the blond man wearing medieval armor, a red cloak, and holding a hammer. The other party was wrapped in thunder and lightning, and his momentum was fierce and brave, like a fierce general on the battlefield. Facing Selina and her friends, he was not afraid at all, but revealed excitement, and the surging fighting spirit in his eyes seemed to pierce the sky. Enemy! Serena burst out with a fierce fighting spirit in front of the man in front of her, her eyes exuding coldness, and several breaths intertwined and integrated like dark clouds covering the dome, like mountains pressing down, making the man feel the tremendous pressure acting on himself. The ground under his feet cracked because he could not bear this pressure, and the entire moon-shaped island began to shake violently, and the surrounding waves kept surging and hitting. The waves broke and fell into the sea. Several breaths collided, and arcs and sparks were generated in the air because of the collision. Under this dark night sky, a strange landscape was formed. Whether it is an enemy or not depends on you. The person who came was none other than Thor from the Asgard Odin family. He looked around with his tiger eyes. He had to admit that the appearance and cold temperament of Selina and the others made him feel bright. But what made him even happier was the powerful strength these women possessed. It was no less powerful than himself. If possible, Thor wanted to fight with Selina and the others right now, but when he thought of the hidden danger of the big snake, he suppressed the idea. Perhaps because of the arrogance of the gods, he habitually spoke in a condescending manner regardless of the tone and content, which made Selina and the others look even colder. No matter who you are, kneel down now, I will take you to confess before my God. Selina didn't care about the identity of the man in front of her. His sudden attack and arrogant hostility in his words were enough to mark him as an enemy for them, who had already become members of the Leon Guards. Except my father and mother, no one can make me. Thor. Odinson, kneel down and repent. Thor was annoyed and said angrily, with lightning flashing in his eyes, tightly holding Mjolnir, his old friend who had been with him for many years. Boom. After Thor finished speaking, Selina and the other two women determined that Thor was an enemy, and exploded their small universe without hesitation. The surging energy raged. Selina and the other two female instructors rushed to the center Thor in a triangle formation at the speed of sound. The other four instructors were located in the four corners around them, posing different attack postures. The speed was frightening, but Thor was the most outstanding bloodline of the Odinson family after all. His current strength was not bad, and he was blessed by divine power. The god of storms had authority over God. From the sky, a terrifying and thick thunder fell. But it was only a distance of a few dozen meters. Selina and others, who started at the speed of sound, rushed to Thor almost instantly. Selina was the fastest and punched Thor's head. The remaining two female instructors punched one by one and blasted towards Thor's chest, and another one attacked from behind, kicking a whip kick towards Thor's legs. The three people attacked from three directions, forming a perfect complementary attack. Even if they blocked one attack, they would definitely not be able to block the remaining two, and there was no room to dodge. But Thor had been through many battles after all. The moment Selina and the other two attacked, he realized that he had been killed. But in such a desperate situation, Thor could often create miracles. He was a natural warrior and was very keen on fighting. Without hesitation, he held Mjolnir in his right hand, squatted slightly with his legs, and then swept Mjolnir, rotating his body together. The rotation range of tens of thousands of times in 1 second, coupled with the terrible thunder blessing of a divine weapon of this level of Mjolnir, instantly rolled up a terrifying thunderstorm. The three women of Selina, after awakening the sixth sense, they have reached the level of perfect control over their strength and body. Even if the attack distance is only 0.01 centimeters, if they want, they can immediately withdraw the attack without any backlash to themselves, but they did not do so. They must use absolute strength to take down Thor at the fastest speed. This is their first battle, and they must completely protect the majesty of the guards of God. Boom! The attack came and hit the thunderstorm heavily. With the three people as the center, a terrifying air wave burst out, like a torrent, washing all directions crazily. The entire huge satellite island collapsed, split, and collapsed in an instant. The sky was full of gravel and dust, mixed with arcs of electricity, sweeping and tearing everything. The sea around the edge of the island was also blown away by the collision of power, forming a strange concave scene. The terrible aftermath also hit the main island base, but the other instructors did not move. Lisa's figure instantly appeared on the edge of the wide flat ground, stretched out a hand, and the huge psychokinesis formed a crystal wall of visible blocks, blocking the terrifying torrent-like air waves. It was gorgeous and had a sense of order, and more than 200 children, including Yelena, had stars in their eyes, full of envy and admiration. The power of the storm, similar to the power of the microcosm, is powerful, and also has a sense of sacredness and antiquity. Lisa silently watched the battle on the island ahead, feeling the power of controlling the storm, and she was thinking. The identity of the person coming must be extraordinary, perhaps he is also an ancient race, or perhaps a god race. We should focus on ourselves now, and we need to know more about the outside world. Lisa kept this in mind. Just as she was paying attention to and vigilantly protecting the children, she suddenly felt something was wrong, and turned her head to the left. Her eyes were like Hawkeye, and her figure moved sideways instantly, as if she had teleported instantly, and suddenly appeared in front of an open space about 50 meters away. She stretched out her hand and seemed to grab the air and held it in the air. It's a very hidden magic, but the arrogance that comes from your bones can't be hidden from me. Lisa said coldly, and the white and slender jade hand exerted a little force like an iron clamp. Who, as if the neck was stuck, a sound of discomfort came, and a green light and shadow passed in front of her, and a man wearing a green armor robe, a goat-horned helmet, a head of black slightly curly shawl long hair and a handsome pale face appeared. At the moment, he was strangled by Lisa, his face flushed, and his feet were lifted off the ground. You can actually see through my magic. This person is Loki. Loki's expression is distorted, because of the pain caused by suffocation, and because of the disbelief that his fraudulent magic was discovered. After falling from Bifrost, he and Thor felt the danger not far away. Loki thought that he was not on the same track as Thor. Although he was also a warrior, he was different from Thor, who always liked to fight head-on. He liked to plan before acting, so the moment he came to Midgard, he used fraudulent magic to stay away from Thor. Sure enough, the next second, he saw several figures like meteors rushing over with a terrifying aura, and launched a terrible attack that was like destroying the world, smashing towards Thor. Loki couldn't help sweating on his back. Fortunately, if he had just stood next to Thor, he would have had to face this level of attack head-on. Although Loki has the physique of a god, he doesn't think he can bear it. Loki, who was lucky to have escaped, ran away. As for Thor, the reckless man, he had to fight with those terrible women. He took this opportunity to sneak into the main island, but as soon as he stepped in, he saw more than 200 children being protected by several beautiful Midgardians, and there was someone who used some unknown means to form a crystal wall to block the air wave attack. Then he was discovered by the woman, who came in front of him in an instant, ignored the fraud magic, and caught him alive. Loki felt incredible. He thought that his fraud magic should be ranked among the top in the 9 realms. The only people who could see through his fraud magic were the god King Odin, his mother Frigga, and Heimdall, who was born with a pair of eyes that could see through the 9 realms. Even Thor couldn't see through it. In the backward world of Midgard, another one appeared, and he was so strong that he smelled the breath of death. Chapter 67. You are also one of the invaders. Lisa didn't care what the pretty boy in armor robe and horn helmet thought. Her eyes were cold, and she moved her fingers slightly with force, intending to directly pinch the invader to death. Feeling the pressure from his neck and the undisguised murderous intent in the woman's eyes, Loki panicked. Regardless of the stinging pain from his neck, he hurriedly shouted, "Wait, wait, we are not enemies. I'm from Asgard." At the critical moment of life and death, Loki's words became fluent, fearing that he would be strangled to death by this woman without mercy after explaining his identity. Then Loki really felt like crying without tears. Sure enough, after Loki hurriedly explained his identity, Lisa's murderous intent retreated a little, and her originally strong fingers also relaxed a little. Asgard. 82-3 Lisa felt as if she had heard of this name. The evolution of her life level made her soul thinking complete a leap. It can be said that her memory is superior. She instantly mobilized her memory and thought of the information of Asgard. Asgard in Norse mythology. She frowned and stared at Loki, asking coldly. Loki hurriedly replied, "Yes, it is Asgard. I am Loki, the son of Asgard, the king of god Odin. The son of the god king." Lisa wondered if the pretty boy in front of her was lying. After all, he was the son of the king of god Odin in Norse mythology. How could he be so weak? Judging from his performance, he was probably weak and did not match this identity at all. "The one over there, also from Asgard like you, Thor." Lisa raised her other hand and pointed her finger at the man who was still fighting on the broken and collapsed island and asked. "Yes, he is my brother. Loki is so well behaved now, answering every question. The main reason is that he is really afraid that the little girl in front of him will think he is lying and then kill him. He knows that this girl will really do this, regardless of the identity of the son of Odin." Boom! 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 There are roars in the distance again, and a figure wrapped in lightning can be seen soaring into the sky, followed by Selina and several other girls quietly following. Loki is not an ordinary mortal, so he can naturally see the blood overflowing from the corners of Thor's mouth as he soars into the sky and looks cool. In such a short time, he has been injured? Loki was shocked again. He looked down on Thor's brain, but he had never doubted his strength. Even if Thor's body was thrown into the magma, it would only be like a bath. The strength of the body plus the divine power would not cause harm to it with ordinary weapons and attacks. Number of times when facing strong enemies, Thor also relied on this indestructible body to finally defeat his opponent. Obviously, before a minute had passed, he was injured and had to fly into the sky. What are these people? Loki felt that he had discovered something extraordinary, and even began to doubt whether these people were warriors trained by the Great Snake over the years. After all, from Loki's perspective, except for the previous generation of God King, other races did not have that ability at all. It's just that the power they possessed was completely different from the power of the Odinson family. "What is the purpose of your coming to Earth?" Lisa continued to interrogate again. Loki woke up and answered while thinking in his heart, "Midgard is ruled by Asgard." But before he finished speaking, he felt the fingers pinching his neck slightly forcefully, and he immediately shut up and changed his tone, "We are just here for inspection." Loki didn't know the true identities of these people, so he naturally didn't dare to tell the truth. Even though he was a fraud and lied countless times, he couldn't escape Lisa's eyes. Lisa used to be from the Red Room and was a graduated Black Widow. In her memory, she had the most professional interrogation, psychological capture, micro-expression analysis, and other skills. In addition to her sixth sense after awakening the microcosm. Integrate, so that she can easily see through any slight tone, emotion, even heartbeat, pulse, eyes, and other changes when Loki speaks. Almost the moment Loki lied, she had confirmed it. Lie. Lisa immediately exposed Loki's lie, a thin layer of flames ignited all over her body, and her eyes burst out with murderous intent again. This look made Loki's forehead sweat constantly. This woman has such a keen sense. Looking up at the sky, several meteor-like figures kept interweaving and colliding in the sky, blasting layers of air waves, and huge amounts of holes were constantly blasted in the thick clouds. The lightning and thunder were completely unbalanced, exploding wildly, and the sea was surging, making the surrounding sea scene look like the end of the world. Loki moved his lips and wanted to shout Heimdall and summon Bifrost, but Bifrost also had time. The moment Bifrost fell, he might be killed. Loki was afraid of death but not afraid of it. He was afraid of death because he thought his legendary road had just begun. He hoped that his name would spread throughout the universe and become the brightest and most dazzling star in the history of the Odinson family. He did not want to die before embarking on this road. His brain was spinning wildly, and finally Loki said in a deep voice, "Thor and I came to Midgard to investigate something." Lisa stared coldly at the lying pretty boy without speaking, but Loki knew it very well, so he continued. My brother Thor had a prophetic dream, dreaming that a huge amount of fear disaster spread to the 9 kingdoms. Our duty is to maintain the stability of the 9 kingdoms, so we came to Midgard to investigate the source of the incident. Loki said everything sincerely. He was betting that the women in front of him were not warriors trained by the snake. Whether he won or lost, there would be no worse results. He stared at Lisa, who also stared at Loki expressionlessly for a few seconds before slightly loosening her hand. Loki fell to the ground, coughed a few times, and subconsciously wanted to cast magic to run away from this woman, but Lisa was staring at him covetously, with an expression that said, if you dare to move, I will kill you. Loki was helpless, but also gave up his idea obediently. What a difficult woman! Loki cursed in his heart. It's a pity that there is a very powerful magic power protecting your brain, so I can't read your memory. Lisa said regrettably on the side, and Loki's mouth twitched. Chapter 68. Rumble the sky, bright starlight exploded, a figure wrapped in lightning fell obliquely towards the surging sea, bang, the water splashed all over the sky, like an explosion splashing in all directions, the figure fell into the depths of the sea, but the next second it immediately broke through the sea surface and floated in the air. Thor held Mjolnir in his hand, feeling the blood surging in his body, the broken bones, and the stinging pain of damaged internal organs, his tiger eyes swept the sky. Fighting bloody battles, in a short time of confrontation, he was completely at a disadvantage, and it can even be said that he was crushed. The opponent's combat power was beyond his expectations. Whether it was strength, speed, reaction, or physical attainments, he rarely encountered such a level in the battles he had experienced, and the degree of tacit understanding of the siege when they joined together could only be said to be the dripping tribe. The offensive was like a tide, one layer after another, not letting him breathe at all. Under countless desperate crises, he was in danger. The most important thing is that the opponent's fist has a destructive power that he has never seen before. If it weren't for his armor, Mjolnir was made by the dwarfs and blessed by rune magic, I'm afraid that under that fist, it would have been scrapped and broken on the spot. Even so, he was almost defeated on the spot after being hit twice during the siege. Fortunately, he had the divine power to bless his self-healing ability beyond imagination, so he could barely maintain it. Thor never thought that this country, which had always been backward and ignorant in his cognition, would have so many terrible gods. Bang! Thinking for only a moment, the air in the sky not far away exploded blurry, and instantly moved behind Thor. At the moment, under the high pressure of the battle, Thor slacked for a while. Just a little slackness brought him irreparable disaster. A slender finger with red nails pressed against his back. A red cross starlight suddenly exploded. Boom! 01. The intense impact and stinging pain penetrated Thor's back, causing him to shoot forward like a cannonball, for dozens of kilometers, and then fell obliquely, sliding on the sea, breaking through layers of huge waves along the way, and the sea surface was also cut into a long ditch with waves stretching for more than 10 kilometers. Floating on the sea, Thor felt as if he was burned by poisonous fire, and his blood was flowing with poison. He found that his divine body was gradually paralyzed, and the terrible pain tortured his will. Even with his iron-like heart, he couldn't help shouting out. Thor searched with divine power to dispel this abnormal state, but he was shocked to find that he couldn't do it at all. It seemed that countless steel needles were pierced into his body, firmly embedded in his body, hindering the flow of his divine power, and he couldn't control the storm again. Thor knew that he had lost this battle, and he lost miserably. Half of his head sank into the sea, and his expression was full of unwillingness. His consciousness gradually began to blur, his eyes slowly turned dark, and he finally fainted, his body drifting on the sea surface until Selina flew up into the sky, stretched out her jade hand, and grabbed Thor on the sea surface with her invisible huge psychokinesis, sucking him into her hand. She grabbed the other's hair without mercy and flew towards the center of the island base. The other instructors behind him followed closely like meteors. Holding Thor, Selina, and the other girls landed on the platform of the island base. The children witnessed this battle comparable to that of gods with their own eyes, and they couldn't help but cheer in admiration and excitement. Instructor Selina, you are so amazing, so great. Humph, 2 hateful invaders, daring to invade the base, are simply looking for death. I think they must be mentally ill. Why do I feel that the 2 guys' dresses seem a little different? Logically speaking, these 2 people don't seem to be from Earth. Are they mutants? Definitely not. The cheers of the children also made Selina and several female instructors smile gently. They have experienced cruel darkness, and naturally yearn for light and peace and are more willing to see the innocent smiles on the children's faces. Selina waved her hand and asked some other assistant instructors in the base to take the children back to the dormitory. The next thing, these children are not qualified to participate. Thor, who was like a dead dog, was thrown to the ground casually. Loki, who was standing next to Lisa, liked to see the scene of Thor being beaten, but after all, he was now in prison, so he was really not happy. How is it? Selina glanced at the well-behaved and honest Loki, and Selina looked at Lisa. This pretty boy is called Loki. According to him, that is Thor, from Asgard. He said that Thor foresaw a disaster that would endanger the 9 realms and came to Earth to investigate. Lisa explained. Selina and the other girls frowned and looked at each other. In the distance, the sea was surging and roaring, and the dark clouds in the sky gradually dissipated, revealing the moonlight, which fell on the platform. After a little thought, Selina looked at Loki and asked coldly, "Where is Asgard?" "Asgard is in a world farther away from the Earth." "What is the means by which you came to the Earth?" "Bifrost, can reach the destination as quickly as possible across the distance." Selina interrogated carefully, and Loki did not hesitate at all, and told everything he knew like pouring beans, including the 9 kingdoms and the world tree, etc., and he was definitely vague about Asgard. He just said some information that Asgard knew on the surface. As for military strength and some secrets, he used words to hide them. Selina noticed this, but did not delve into it. The information on the surface was enough for her to digest, and she also took this opportunity to learn many unknown secrets, such as other dimensions, hell, heaven, Asgard, Olympus, other major forces in the universe, etc. She planned to record this information and report it to Ophelia, who was in charge of them and commanded them. At the same time, she would record it in the database, and when the reserve soldiers of the Guards Corps grew up, she would learn and memorize it. After all, as a spy, she valued information very much. Lisa. Selina looked at Lisa, who knew what Selina wanted. Just as she was about to nod, she saw 10 beautiful figures emerging from the passage gate not far away with a golden vortex and walking out with light and elegant steps. Seeing this person, everyone, including Selina, bowed their heads and held their left fists in front of their chests. Lord Viper. The person who came was Viper Ophelia, wearing a brown coat and tights, with an elegant and mature temperament, but in Loki's eyes, he was extremely shocked and instinctively felt the danger. Another one. How many gods of this level are there in Midgard? Yes, in Loki's eyes, he and Thor are gods, and those who can beat Thor and him are definitely gods. In addition, he feels that these people have divinity and a hint of immortality, which is something that mortals cannot have. Ophelia appeared, and Selina told all the information she got from the interrogation. Not bad, how do you feel? Ophelia nodded and asked. This Loki is very weak, but his physical fitness is not bad, his heart is cunning, and he is also good at magic. Selina ignored the secretly angry Loki and gave him a blunt evaluation, but pointed to Thor, who was lying on the ground and twitching less and less. He is very powerful, able to harness the power of storms, with excellent combat awareness, stronger physique and both strength and speed, but he has great shortcomings and defects in physical skills. One-on-one, it may take me a long time to defeat him. He grows very fast and has strong adaptability in combat. Selina's evaluation is very pertinent. Ophelia tapped her chin lightly, looking at Thor lying on the ground, and said, "Hey, after being injected with your scarlet poison needle, he adapted so quickly. This body is really good. It is very suitable as a material for her poison experiment." I added in my heart, but she knew that she could not make the decision on this matter. After all, it involved the legendary Asgard in Norse mythology, the Asgard gods, the king of God Odin, Loki, and Thor, and she could not make the decision on her will. It's really hard. With our sixth sense fists, we were only injured after 2 punches, but then we recovered quickly. It's not inferior to our physique. Selina agreed. The destructive power of their fists is enough to break any matter into atomic structure. Thor's 2 punches hit the chest, one of which was protected by armor, but the other was hit firmly on the forehead. The opponent just spit out blood and fainted for a moment. Okay, the rest of you continue the children's training. Selina and Lisa, take these 2 guys with me to the temple. As she spoke, Ophelia pointed her finger at Thor's chest, and a green light burst out between her purple nails, and a beam of light poured into Thor's chest. The latter seemed to be stimulated, and sat up suddenly. His eyes were hazy as if he had just woken up. He quickly shook his head to dispel the drowsy feeling, stood up, and held Mjolnir tightly to make a fighting posture. Then his eyes saw his brother Loki, who was standing beside Lisa and waving helplessly at him. Loki. Yeah, my dear brother. Loki responded weakly. Thor then realized that he had been defeated, and seeing Loki's condition, he put down Mjolnir and said heroically, Son of Midgard, you have won my respect. Since you have been defeated, I am now a prisoner. Thor is a man who can afford to lose. Lightning exploded, and the armor on his body fell away, revealing his usual clothes, which were decorated in a very delicate style and fit his figure. Then, my two princes, please follow me and meet my god. Ophelia narrowed her eyes when she saw Thor's behavior. She could easily analyze Thor's character. As for disguise, there were not many people who could hide it from her eyes, not to mention that she was not present. After she finished speaking, she walked towards the golden vortex channel. Thor and Loki followed her under the watchful eyes of Lisa and Selina. The group sank into the golden vortex channel and slowly returned to their original state. The other instructors looked at each other and walked towards the dormitory building inside the base. The golden vortex channel is a magic that Leon improved through the Camartage magic portal. Most of the effects are the same, and it can not only be used for teleportation, but also a killing skill. If used properly, it can kill the enemy instantly. But this thing is not very useful for people who have already reached the level of sixth sense. After all, those who are weaker than them can be killed by a sonic punch at will. Those who can reach the same level as them, magic is not as efficient as other means of killing enemies. But teleportation is really fast, simple and convenient. Thor and Loki felt that the environment in front of him changed in a blink of an eye. What caught his eye was the very wide huge amounts of halls. The towering ceiling of the hall seemed to have star patterns. The moonlight shone through it, as if he was in the vast starry sky. There were 13 large pillars standing around, with some very delicate and beautiful patterns carved on them. The ground was as smooth as a clear lake. The whole hall exuded solemnity, and sacredness, which made people feel awe. In the eyes of Thor and Loki, this was different from the style of the Asgard hall, with another unique temperament. At least being here made the two of them feel no disrespect in their hearts. The two brothers were full of solemnity at the moment. Not to mention Loki, even if Thor was stupid, he knew what kind of great god he was about to meet. To be able to cultivate powerful gods such as Selina, Lisa, and Ophelia, it would take a great power. Perhaps he should be at the same level as their father god Odin. No wonder the father god stopped us from coming to Midgard to investigate. Thor and this thought immediately flashed through Loki's mind, and he suddenly realized it. Holding their breath, the two walked in the hall, passing one after another of the pillars that reached the sky, and came to the end of the hall, and saw a tall figure with his back to them under the glass with the constellations in front of him. When he got closer, he turned around. At first glance, he was very handsome, with black hair, handsome and perfect facial features, a tall body, and a pair of eyes that seemed to contain stars. 10 glances seemed to sink into concentration. Although he was wearing a slightly simple and fashionable dress, his temperament was elegant and noble. Chapter 69. Seeing the man, Ophelia, Selina, and Lisa all knelt on one knee and bowed their heads, their expressions full of respect. Leon waved his hand, and the three women stood up. His eyes were on the two brothers Thor and Loki. In a word, an invisible sense of oppression permeated. The two brothers were palpitating, but they gritted their teeth and held their heads high because of the pride of Asgard. Loki was definitely still very nervous. He regretted why he couldn't help seeing Thor like that, but since it was like this, he could only hold on. Watching the performance of the two, Selina couldn't bear it and scolded, "You dare to be so arrogant when you see my god." As she said that, a scarlet halo bloomed on the fingertips of her right hand. She wanted to give these two guys 14 scarlet poison needles each to let them taste the heart-wrenching torture and pain. Loki's forehead was sweating and he was getting more and more panicked, but Thor was still fearless in the face of Selina's scolding, Ophelia and Lisa's cold eyes. He held Mjolnir in his left hand, supported his chest with his right hand, and said, "Your strength and greatness deserve my respect, but I, the son of Odin, will not abandon my honor." Leon raised his hand, and the scarlet halo blooming on Selina's fingertips, who was about to attack, dimmed and stepped aside. The pride that comes from the blood of the Odin family is indeed worthy of praise. Leon's voice was very calm, but Loki was no longer sweating, but sweating profusely. The more he listened, the more wrong he felt. His heart was trembling. Although this man who looked not very old did not burst out any momentum, the invisible sense of oppression made Loki instinctively trigger the alarm and let him run away quickly, the farther the better. But Loki didn't take this warning seriously at all, because he couldn't escape at all. Then what about Thor's hammer? Leon took a step and walked towards Thor and Loki step by step. With each step, a crisp sound rang in their ears. The pervasive sense of oppression became stronger as he approached step by step. When he was about to walk in front of Thor and Loki, the sense of oppression was like a substance, pressing the two to bend over, and sweat kept dripping from their foreheads. Loki had completely given up, so he was suppressed. As for Thor, he was still not convinced. He gritted his teeth and roared while holding Mjolnir tightly. He wanted to straighten his body. Lightning flashed on his body, but under this invisible pressure, his divine power was compressed back into his body like the tide receding, and he was no longer under his control. His heart was beating wildly, blood in his blood vessels was muddy, and his face was flushed, as if he was about to explode at any time. Fear grew from Loki's heart. It was strong, stronger than ever before. He had only felt this kind of strength once in his life, when he had completely angered Father God Odin because of something. Odin's anger seemed to tear the sky apart. He even felt that his body and soul were about to be torn apart. He never felt it again after that. Now, the man who walked in slowly in front of him felt it again. Damn, he was a god of the same level as Father God. Who was this person? Could it be Father God's brother serpent, the previous God King? No, it was impossible. He didn't have the blood mark and breath of the Odin family on him, but why would such a powerful god appear in Midgard? Loki screamed in despair. He felt that he and Thor were going to die in this place. Because of fear and despair, the wisdom that Loki was proud of became turbid, ignorant, and unable to think. The distance was short, but it was this short distance that seemed to stretch time infinitely. During this time, everything in front of them, the world was upside down, chaotic, collapsed, and distorted. The horrible torture continued during this stretched time, trying to completely numb their will and eventually annihilate it. Thor's will is very strong, so strong that no matter how painful it is, he will not give in and will continue to fight, even if the man in front of him is so strong that he can lose his mobility just by relying on the pressure of his breath. As for Loki, who is in a bad situation, this continuous and increasingly strong pressure will completely lead to despair. He even vaguely sees that only people who die can see the kingdom of the dead. If he dies now, Loki knows that he is not even qualified to enter the Soul Castle. Surrounded by despair, Loki's heart is like a lit match, and a flame is ignited. It is a flame of anger and unwillingness. He doesn't want to die, and doesn't want to die so aggrieved. He is Loki, the unique Loki. He wants to surpass Thor and let the world see that he is the king who is truly qualified to rule Asgard, the strongest king who surpasses Odin. This humiliating death, Loki can't accept it, and he can't accept it at all. Two different obsessions injected them with infinite courage, so that under the increasingly strong pressure, their bent upper bodies began to slowly straighten up. Crunch crunch the bones kept wailing, which sounded so harsh in the hall. The performance of the two brothers made Ophelia, Selina, and Lisa look at them sideways and couldn't help but show appreciation. Not bad. The two brothers felt as if 10,000 years had passed in this confrontation, but the flame did not go out. Suddenly, they felt the overwhelming terror and invisible oppression dissipated like a breeze, and their bodies relaxed. The familiar and peaceful voice came to their ears. The two brothers subconsciously straightened their bodies and looked at Leon, who stood in front of them without knowing when. The originally firm eyes were confused. As expected of the blood of the Odinson family, you are excellent, even better than I thought. Leon was not stingy with his praise, especially looking at Loki. You surprised me even more. I originally thought you would be in a terrible situation. You Thor and Loki looked at each other, and looked at Leon with some doubts. What does this mean? How does it feel? Leon asked back, and the two brothers realized that their bodies seemed to have unprecedented comfort, and their bodies and souls seemed to be cleansed, and the divine power surging in their bodies became more active. At this time, the two brothers knew that it was because of the man in front of them. So they clenched their right fists on their chests and lowered their noble heads. Thank you very much for your help, respected God King. Personally felt the terrifying and powerful man in front of them. They have included each other and the Father God Odin in 10 Kankai. Thank yourselves. If you can't make it, you will die. The two brothers choked and smiled awkwardly. After escaping death, they dared not offend again. Thor, who was stubborn, also realized that he was too domineering just now. Not only did he rashly break into the territory where people trained warriors, but he was also unruly in front of the other party. At this level, it was stupid and suicidal. The two brothers were stunned by the blow before they could figure it out. Thinking about it now, they are scared. Fortunately, they managed to survive. Otherwise, they would really die. Thor did not doubt the truth of the man's words. Just as he thought, Leon did hit them hard, but not to the point of killing them. If the two brothers could not survive, they would not die, but would be seriously injured at most. He was not afraid of Asgard, but was afraid of that old man Odin. Old Deng was a time bomb. Old Deng was different from other gods. Other gods who could not live forever would gradually grow old due to the decay of their bodies. Old Deng's life level became stronger and stronger over time, but at the same time, Odin's power soared faster, increasing day by day, and gradually the two began to lose balance. The body could not bear the increasingly powerful power of Odin, and had to digest this power through Odin's sleep from time to time. But this was just a delaying measure. It would eventually lose balance completely, and Odin had to disintegrate actively, otherwise Odin's power would burst his body, and that huge energy could easily destroy countless galaxies. Odin is now at his peak, but this peak combat power will not last long. No matter if he wins or loses, he will be gone in the future. So it is a trigger bomb. If you really anger this old Deng, he will make the opponent disregard all consequences. The opponent may not die, because he can enter the Soul Castle and survive in another form, but the opponent will definitely be finished. Even Leon thinks he can't stand it. Thanos has to wait until the Ancient One and Odin die together before he dares to come to Earth to start family planning, because he can't stand these two old Dengs and feels dangerous. Leon has a very clear positioning and plan for himself. Before he completely surpasses the achievement of the main god, judging the situation is also an important part. He is not arrogant enough to ignore that old Deng. There is no need. Leon looked at Selina and Lisa and whispered, "Thank you for your hard work, Selina, Lisa. This is what we should do." The two women immediately knelt on one knee and said excitedly. Leon did not make any movement, and the two women were helped up by the invisible power. After a few more words of advice, Selina and Lisa left the temple. Watching the two women leave, Leon walked towards the temple terrace, and Ophelia followed behind him. The two brothers Thor looked at each other and hurried to catch up. The terrace was very wide and located on the highest floor of the temple. There was no guardrail, and the scenery of the entire Madrid port could be seen directly from below. At night, the moon hanging high in the sky was very bright, and the lights under the city were as bright as stars. The sound of car horns and the hustle and bustle made this city-state seem like a city that never sleeps. The four people walked one after the other, blowing the wind, and Leon overlooked the Madrid port. With his eyesight, he could naturally see the various emotions of the residents in the streets and residential buildings through the doors and windows. Some people were lying lazily on the sofa watching TV, some were holding hands together watching the game and drinking, some were praying silently at the dining table, and some were mothers scolding and teaching their children who made mistakes. All the various aspects of life are here. If there is any sigh, there is no need to sigh. After all, for someone like Leon who has a clear goal, or he is still too young, everything he has is not easy, but it is also smooth. He has also made his own efforts, but there are too many people in the world who work hard but cannot reach his level. It is Ophelia and Melina who helped build the current Madripoor port. He is just a nuclear bomb that plays a deterrent role. He accumulates his insights at home, eats and plays with his family, and does not participate too much in person. At most, there is a sense of accomplishment. He is very satisfied. He has turned a country that is trapped in swamps and quagmires into a developed country that countless people in the world yearn to live here permanently. It's a beautiful place. Chen Ting didn't expect it to have developed to this point. Loki sighed first and then began to flatter him openly and secretly, "But I think it must be inseparable from your kindness. As a mortal, I can't see disease, hunger, and defective." During the years of war, he had seen too many backward civilizations. The civilizations were not very developed, but the words such as food, clothing, and peace were very rare. Diseases, famines, and hunger were the norm. Midgard, also a country ruled by Asgard, now seeing a different scenery, Loki was not lying. Thor looked left and right nodding quickly as if he had suddenly realized something. Ophelia was proud. She also made efforts here. She definitely felt a little guilty. After all, during her rule, Madripoor port, well, let's not talk about it. Leon laughed dumbly and turned to look at the two brothers. Are you here for the big snake? He had noticed it before the two brothers opened the Bifrost and came to the earth. After that, he saw everything that Thor and his brother did in the Pacific base. The purpose of the two coming to the earth was clear. Yes, your majesty, I dreamed not long ago that fear and disaster spread across the 9 kingdoms, and the big snake was about to revive. Loki and I came to Midgard hopes to find the source, because Heimdall discovered the abnormally powerful energy of Midgard. We came to the vicinity and caused a misunderstanding. Please forgive us. Thor hurriedly explained, and his expression became serious when he mentioned the big snake. Big snake, Leon murmured, and then said with a hint of meaning, a destined fate ring has been activated. Your Majesty, you are in Midgard now, have you found anything? Thor asked respectfully. If a god of the same level as Odin said that he didn't notice it, he would not believe it. At this level, it can almost be said that he is omniscient and omnipotent. Chapter 70. You know the identity of the Great Serpent? He is from Asgard and is the elder brother of your father Odin. What happened next? After the Great Serpent was defeated by my father, he was sealed in Midgard. Thor answered without hesitation. Leon nodded, and then spoke like thunder, I have searched the entire earth, not leaving out an inch of land or a corner, and I have not found any seal. Ophelia's eyes flickered slightly. Thor and Loki were even more shocked. How is this possible? Thor said in a lost voice. The Great Serpent is not on earth. Leon turned around and stretched out his finger. A blue-breasted quail that was originally flying in the sky seemed to be tired. It fluttered its wings without any fear of humans. Its thin claws grabbed Leon's index finger, and then used its pointed beak to comb its messy wings due to flight. Looking at this delicate and small creature, he continued slowly, where do you think she would be? Thor and Loki both had serious and deep expressions, and were thinking. Thor was thinking about why the serpent was not on the earth, while Loki thought more deeply. In the information he was looking for, it was clearly Odin who defeated the serpent and sealed it in the bottom of Midgard. The man in front of him said that he didn't find it. Is the information wrong? Or is this man lying? The former is easy to say, if it is the latter, then why did this man lie? Is there any connection between him and the serpent? This man does not have the mark of Asgard's divine power, but it does not mean that it is not an illusion. At this level, is it difficult to hide it from him and Thor? Could it be that he is the serpent? The more Loki thought about it, the more panicked he became. The more he thought about it, the more he wondered if this man had some terrible conspiracy. He stared at Leon's back. In a trance, he seemed to see a terrifying big snake, spitting out its tongue, and staring at him with its dark and greedy snake eyes. He swallowed unconsciously, and a drop of cold sweat hung on his forehead. Thor didn't think too much about it. He touched his stubbled chin and felt very strange. If my father really sealed the big snake in Midgard, and even his majesty the God King couldn't find it, could it be that he broke the seal in advance? But if the seal is broken, with his cruel and tyrannical character, he will definitely spread panic to strengthen his own power. If the seal is not broken, could it be that it is not in Midgard, and there is an error in the records at that time? Odin, this stupid idiot, stop talking. The more Loki listened, the more frightened he became. He was afraid that Thor, this guy with a broken brain, would reveal the truth all at once, and then they would either be skinned alive or die. Loki now wanted to sew Thor's stinky mouth shut. Thor did not notice his brother's murderous eyes, he analyzed it by himself. Or, this seal drove the big snake to another dimension, a dimension that only my father can head. This kind of seal is not unfamiliar to Asgard. And this kind of seal is very powerful. When it is driven to a certain dimension and sealed, it will leave a very hidden and obscure medium at the original seal location. If so, it makes sense. Maybe you are right. Leon's voice came melodiously, making Loki feel relieved. Fortunately, his stupid brother did not think of another possibility, but the next words made him nervous again. Leon gently raised his hand, and the blue-breasted quail fluttered its wings and flew away. He turned around and looked at Thor and Loki. But, even if you know where the source of the seal is, what can you do? Can you break the seal left by Odin? Or after breaking the seal, can you kill the big snake? Can you do it? As soon as these words came out, Thor immediately froze in place, and Loki was trembling all over. Based on that terrible suspicion, he felt that the meaning of these words had changed, and even full of murderous intent. As long as the answer was wrong, he might still die. Your Majesty, what you mean is that this has nothing to do with the seal, but someone wants to break the seal in some way to let the big snake break free from the seal. Loki's mind was working rapidly, and he spoke first before Thor. Perhaps it was because he had made great progress under the high pressure before, so that his ability to control his body was greatly enhanced. Even though he was very nervous, his expression, eyes, and heartbeat were all extremely normal. That's the only possibility. Leon nodded as if he agreed. Loki felt relieved, then frowned in a serious manner, and said righteously, "It must be the believers who were bewitched by the snake. They tried every means to unseal the snake and spread fear. I, Loki, will never let such a thing happen." "Well said, my brother, our duty is to maintain the peace of the 9 realms." Thor was aroused by Loki's words, his eyes were firm, and he shouted, "The evil snake will be defeated by justice, and those evil bastards who want to subvert the peace of the 9 realms must be beheaded, and their ugliness will be spurned by the 9 realms. I beg you to stop scolding, my stupid brother. Loki is tired." Fortunately, Leon seems to appreciate it very much, and said with a smile, "What are you going to do next?" Without waiting for Loki, Thor spoke first, "We want to go back to Asgard. With you in Midgard, I believe that even if the big snake appears in Midgard, it will be defeated by you. Now I am more worried that the seal of the big snake is not in Midgard, but in other dimensions, so that the believers of the big snake will find the seal location. If we can know it in advance, we can keep the seal." Loki glanced at his Thor in surprise without making a sound, and finally stopped talking nonsense. "Good idea, let's go to Ruhwa. Yes, I believe that when the father wakes up, he will definitely invite you to visit Asgard." Thor and Loki nodded respectfully, and after receiving a nod from Leon, Thor shouted Heimdall to the sky, and a dazzling colorful beam of light fell on the terrace. The figures of Thor and Loki disappeared as the colorful beam of light dimmed. Looking up at the two brothers leaving, Leon couldn't help laughing. Ophelia, who had been silent all the time, raised her eyebrows. "Do you think this is wrong?" "All right, Thor is not lying." "Is it the one called Loki who is lying?" "He is the god of fraud, suspicious by nature." Leon smiled, thinking of Loki's nonchalant look just now, but actually panicking to death, he couldn't help laughing. Loki really thought he had hidden it well. In fact, the gap between the two people's life levels was very different. Although the other party was the god of fraud, he was still too young and could not hide his emotional fluctuations at all, or it could be said that this had already involved the soul and spirit. "He suspected that you were a big snake." Ophelia also had a high IQ, and a smile hung on her charming and delicate face. "It was really well concealed. I didn't even see it. Under my oppression, his will was tempered and he had grown a lot. He also controlled the magic of fraud. It was normal to hide it from you. You couldn't capture the fluctuations at the soul level. But according to the two brothers, will the big snake bring disaster to the earth?" Ophelia was a little worried. Her thinking changed. The earth was now the basic plate in her eyes. Anyone who dared to destroy Leon's basic plate was an enemy in her heart and should be killed. The snake was too high in level, covering the long river of fate and hiding all the information that could unlock it. No useful information could be found in a short time. Originally, as long as it was on Earth, any major event related to this level would definitely not be hidden from Leon, unless the other party's status was much higher than his, but the level of the snake was not low, at least it was equal to his level, and even the former Odin could not be killed at his peak. Some things that the strong men of the same level wanted to do would cover the long river of fate. To put it bluntly, covering the secrets of heaven, no matter Leon or Odin could not detect it. This is why Odin only noticed the big event of the origin of fear when the snake broke the seal. And the timing was very good, just when Odin fell into a deep sleep. Perhaps this was a destined coincidence in the dark, originally an unchangeable fate. This was a disaster that Thor, Loki, and Aster were destined to experience. 0*. But now Leon's appearance has broken these so-called destinies. It is estimated that the snake itself did not expect that there would be such a freak as Leon. So it is inevitable that the snake will be unsealed. Ophelia was puzzled. Leon shook his head. It may not be necessary, but why stop it? Ophelia's beautiful eyes widened slightly, and then she realized. Yes, why stop it? It has nothing to do with us. The big snake was sealed by Odin, expelled, and after being unsealed, the people it hated the most were Odin, Thor, Loki, and the entire Asgard. Why did they rush to help? They are not vassals of anyone, and neither is Asgard. Seeing Ophelia understand, Leon stretched out his index finger and pointed. We just have to wait and see the show. Yes. Ophelia nodded obediently, then raised her head, stretched out her jade hand to support her long green hair, and her delicate face was charming and extremely moving, and her eyes that fascinated people flashed slightly. It's very late, my master. Leon raised his eyebrows and looked at the beautiful snake in front of him. It's really late. The beautiful moonlight needs company, and gods are no exception. Ophelia was so bold that she walked around Leon with an elegant cat step, showing her charm. Finally, she stood behind Leon, sticking close to him, and a pair of snake-like jade hands wrapped around his body from behind. You have given me a new life, and I will dedicate everything to you, my body and even my soul. Leon's eyes were dim. The wind was strong and the rain was heavy. Suddenly, a sob like sobbing arose, like a cry, and like joy. The temple was very noisy at night. Thor and Loki returned to Asgard, the Bifrost center. The moment the two appeared, Thor felt a pair of hands grabbing his collar before he could speak, and the face of his younger brother Loki appeared. At the moment Loki's expression was extremely ugly, which made Thor confused. This foolish look in Loki's eyes made his anger dissipate a little. He sighed silently, loosened his hands, and said with all his strength. Haven't you discovered it yet? My dear brother. What did you discover? Thor was a little confused by the question. Haven't you ever thought about the identities of those people? Loki asked impatiently. Loki, you know clearly that the other party is a god of the same level as our father, and we have no right to overstep our boundaries. Thor's face was full of seriousness. As the son of a national ruler, Thor's etiquette cultivation since childhood is beyond doubt. To mortals, or people with weak life levels, he may be arrogant, or he may drink with people without any restrictions. But all of this is shown in his superiority. But facing a god whose life level is far higher than his own, as the son of Odin, he represents Asgard, and he must know what etiquette is. The habitual arrogance at the beginning made Thor and Loki suffer. After being taught a lesson, he realized the problem and must not let Loki make mistakes now. This might bring unnecessary enemies to Asgard. Loki stretched out his hand weakly and touched his forehead, shaking his head. Midgard, since Asgard unified the 9 realms, it has been ruled by Asgard. We have been to Midgard countless times. Such a backward and ignorant civilization has suddenly given birth to so many gods, and there is also a king of gods at the same level as our father. My dear brother, haven't you ever thought about the reason? Thor was stunned by Loki's words, and then reacted, frowning, and hesitantly said, You mean that is the big snake? Thank you, my dear brother, you finally figured it out. Loki's expression of a father watching his son grow up made Thor very unhappy. Is this possible? The big snake is in Asgard, and he should have the blood of the Odinson family flowing in his body, and there is a mark, but I don't feel it. Thor said puzzled. The snake is a powerful opponent that even our father God cannot kill. At that level, it is difficult for him to hide it from us. Loki said disdainfully. Chapter 71. If he is a big snake, why doesn't he kill us? He hates the father the most. He has been sealed for countless years. I think the flame of revenge can make a person lose his mind, not to mention the cruel big snake. Thor shook his head and disagreed. Although he was a bit straightforward, he looked at things in some ways, even Loki couldn't compare. What's more, Thor had a feeling that the man couldn't be a big snake. The majestic, elegant, and noble temperament was completely different from the tyrannical big snake in the legend. Loki was helpless. He couldn't convince Thor. Heimdall came to the two of them. He looked serious. What happened to you in Midgard? Thor and Loki looked at Heimdall with doubtful expressions. Didn't you see it? Heimdall is the guardian god, the gatekeeper god. He is an Asgard warrior who can see everything and hear everything. Midgard is the territory ruled by Asgard. This seems a bit doubtful now. It doesn't prevent Heimdall from capturing and seeing it. Heimdall shook his head. After I sent you to the place near that place through Bifrost, I only felt an abnormal energy burst, very short, but I couldn't see you. There should be some kind of power blocking my eyes. That's right. Thor and Loki thought of Leon, and after a little surprise, they were relieved. After thinking about it, It was right. For a god king at the same level as the king of God Odin, these methods were nothing. So Thor and Loki explained it to Heimdall briefly. 077 After hearing about Thor and Loki's experience, Heimdall's cold face also changed. With his eyebrows furrowed, he murmured, "Why did Midgard give birth to a god of this level?" This made Heimdall feel very strange. This was not strange, it was just a joke. Odin was a god king, the father god, and the peak period was not inferior to a single existence. How much accumulation was needed, the innate advantages of the Odin family, plus the accumulation of acquired time. The king of God was created after countless thoughts on knowledge and life and death battles. What about Midgard? Midgard has always been a subordinate of Asgard. Although it is backward and poor, Asgard has neglected some factors, it was completely unaware of the birth of such a god. Moreover, for a small place like Midgard to create a god, it originally existed in theory. Not to mention the father god. Thinking of this, Heimdall warned Thor, "Thor, Loki is right. The time node of the appearance of that god is very strange. I think Loki's guess may be correct. Whether the other party is a big snake or not, we can't discard this possibility. The big snake threatens the entire 9 realms. In Heimdall's view, we must be cautious and take any possibility into consideration." Thor pondered for a moment and nodded, "I understand. Let's go, Loki. We have to find our mother. We need to confirm whether the seal of the Great Snake is in Midgard." "Yes." Loki did not object. He nodded to Heimdall and walked towards Asgard with Thor. Looking at the backs of the two brothers, Heimdall frowned and walked to the central control console. He looked at Midgard through the distance and observed it bit by bit. In his eyes, Midgard is very calm now, so calm that he feels very strange. "God King, what do you want to do?" Base. It was a normal training day. Instructors such as Selina and Lisa did not supervise the children's training, but assisted the instructors. After a certain period of running in, the children in training quickly got the hang of the normal process and made rapid progress. In addition to some necessary instructions, several instructors such as Selina and Lisa accumulated small universes. They were forcibly raised to the level of the sixth sense by Leon, but the subsequent road was not cut off. However, their understanding of certain realms was not as good as that of the warriors who comprehended the microcosm through their own tempering. They needed to make up for these shortcomings compared to the normal warriors who comprehended the sixth sense through awakening. On the top of a cliff on a satellite island that was not particularly large, more than 10 kilometers away from the main island, Selina sat cross-legged on the spot, with her thumbs and index fingers crossed on her legs, and closed her eyes. Her long black hair danced with the sea breeze. While the microcosm in her body was growing silently, she was also comprehending the stars. In the knowledge given to her by God, every warrior may resonate with a certain constellation when awakening the microcosm. Awakening the microcosm does not mean having a guardian constellation, but when resonating with the guardian constellation, then, they will have the holy clothes made by God. With the holy clothes, they will have a special power beyond the guards, called the Saint Seiya. The Saint Seiya, wearing the holy clothes, has a combat power that exceeds that of people without the holy clothes. The saints are the guards of God. No matter who they are, they will aim to become saints. Those children are like this, and they are like this too. When God told Ophelia to tell them, everyone's obsession was not only to awaken the small universe, but also to get the approval of the saint cloth. I don't know how long it has been, the sea is calm and then turbulent, from dawn to sunset, and then to sunrise. At the moment, 3 days have passed. Selina sat cross-legged on the cliff like a lifeless stone sculpture. The passing seabirds occasionally landed beside her because of fatigue and even stood on her shoulders. Until the night fell again. The moonlight shone high in the sky. Suddenly, among the stars hanging in the sky, a few stars gradually began to flicker and brighten, forming a pattern that looked like a lifelike scorpion. The bright stars and the sacred Scorpio seemed to resonate at this moment. Boom! The wonderful sacred sound was melodious and rippled between heaven and earth. All the female instructors such as Lisa, Ophelia, Melina, and others who were practicing in the surrounding satellite islands and all over the world suddenly felt it at this moment. Even the children studying in the main island base walked out of the classroom and looked up at the sky with bright stars. No one spoke, and they were all solemnly witnessing a miracle about to be born. The sea was surging, and countless underwater life broke through the sea surface, active and excited. The animals on the island, including the birds, crawled on the ground, instinctively welcoming the arrival of the sacred. The constellation image of Wangtian Scorpio was bright to the point, and the brilliant and dazzling golden light fell down. The golden light column connecting heaven and earth enveloped the sitting Selina. Her body slowly floated up until it reached the sky. Under the baptism of golden light, the golden particles of the bright stars happily spun around her. Selina opened her eyes. Looking up, the gentle voice of God echoed in her ears, "Go, greet your companions, Selina." Selina understood. She opened her hands, and the next moment, under the witness of the stars, pieces of sacred armor composed of golden shells emerged on the surface of her body. The 2 wings of the golden helmet were attached to her forehead and extended to both sides. A dozen golden balls formed a unique scorpion whip. The gorgeous and arrogant shoulder armor, the golden armor on the chest formed a scorpion shell pattern, with red gems inlaid in the middle. The skirt, arm armor, leg armor, and golden boots matched the white outer and blue inner cloak. It fits Selina's proud figure perfectly, beautiful, mysterious, sacred, and noble. Standing above the sky, witnessed by the stars, the Scorpio gold cloth found its owner, Selina. Wearing the gold cloth, Selina felt joy and happiness from the cloth, and her pink lips were curved. As if she had some enlightenment, she looked up at the distant sky, and in a trance, she saw the majestic and sacred figure, who was gazing at her gently. She knelt on one knee, with her right hand on her chest. Her face was full of longing and enthusiasm. However, a breeze blew gently, making her stand up unconsciously. The mighty and sacred sound resounded in the ears of people all over the world. Selina, representing Scorpio, one of the 12 golds, guards the 12 zodiac signs, and stands at the top of the Holy Land with the highest gold sequence. In the Arctic ice base. In the night when the wind and snow were raging, Wanda, one of the twins, and all the children who were resting and studying in the dormitory, and the instructors, all knelt on one knee involuntarily in an instant. This is respect for the supreme golden sequence. This is the highest order, an order that cannot be violated. Not only them, but also people in all bases in Madripoor, Kosovia, and all over the world are like this. Maybe one day, they can also become the golden sequence and enjoy glory and splendor. They will also bear responsibilities that many people cannot bear. This is the golden saint. My brave warrior, strengthen your faith, fight against all enemies, let your poison needles make the enemies tremble, and under the witness of the stars, embark on a great and difficult road. Selina has an inexplicable feeling here. Her eyes reflect the figures kneeling on the ground one by one. In her mind, such a gentle and encouraging word brushed past. Let the tears in Selina's beautiful eyes flash, like a soft chant, and speak in her heart that only she knows. The moonlight gently falls on the woman who hides the passion under the cold heart, making her wear a hazy veil under the appearance of the golden saint, beautiful and mysterious. The world will not know that at this moment, the bell of destiny is ringing. Under the stars, the legion that makes multi-universe tremble with fear and respect begins its destiny at this moment. Countless people look up at the sky, no matter whether they are in day or night, no matter what race or country they are from. Under the starry sky, they see the absolutely elegant figure standing in the sky wearing the sacred and noble golden holy clothes. Under the sacred voice, no matter who it is, they all know that it is Scorpio Gold Saint Selina. The guards that belong to God alone are also the saint kings who bear the responsibility of protection. Whether it is definitely protecting the earth, that needs to be discussed separately. Saint Sia, is this the Saint Sia? So beautiful. This is the power and authority given by God. The zodiac is named after Scorpio. It's so beautiful. I also want to be a Saint Sia, but unfortunately I don't have the qualifications. That's definitely it. Only the warriors chosen by God can become the Saint Sia king after experiencing countless cruel trials and gaining the recognition of the leader. Damn it, it turns out that there are really gods in this world. It's incredible. Now I don't want to believe in God. Can I change my belief? I want to go to Madripoor harbor. But what is the title of this god? Whether they believe in Leon or not, they are all discussing it excitedly. In the past, they didn't know what a Saint Sia or a Gold Saint Sia was, but now, the information that emerged in their minds made them understand. This is Leon's announcement to the world. These Saint Sia devote all of their lives, souls, and loyalty. The gifts and rewards he gives are glory and splendor. These warriors will follow him and let their names be engraved in the hearts of everyone in the multi-universe. He will let these warriors enjoy this glory. Kamartaj. In the classic and retro building, Ancient One walked out of the door in a white robe, holding a book in her hand. She looked up at the starry sky, as if she had seen the peerless warrior through an endless distance. Your Excellency, what was that just now? Kamartaj, all at this time, all the magicians came out and looked up at the sky. They all heard the sacred sound and saw the golden warrior standing under the starry sky. We witnessed the birth of a warrior who represents miracles. Miracle warriors. The Asian magician was puzzled, but after thinking about it, it seemed to be right. That strange scene could even be transmitted to Kamartaj. You know, Kamartaj has a powerful magic barrier, and ordinary forces cannot penetrate it at all. In addition to him, the magicians in Kamartaj were also pointing and talking, full of curiosity and excitement. Especially young male magicians and female magicians. The former was fascinated by the sacred and graceful demeanor. It was an indescribable beauty, an unforgettable beauty. No man can escape this feeling. As for the female magicians, they envied and yearned. They also hoped to show this beauty like the woman named Selina, so that the world could witness it, romantic and beautiful. Chapter 72. Ancient One ignored the discussion of the disciples, but smiled and shook his head and sighed. It's really hard to see through people. Such a powerful armor full of life miracles should not appear in this universe. It is hidden among the stars. It is really incredible and great. As the Father of Heaven, Ancient One, who controls the time gem, can see many more things than ordinary people. But now she can't see through Leon more and more. The strange and powerful divine power, the armor full of life and light, is constantly born under her nose, making Ancient One doubt whether she has absorbed the power of darkness, which makes her eyes blurry. Ancient One smiled, and the idea in her heart became more and more firm. She has never been so upright in front of her disciples. On the contrary, her wisdom and knowledge let her clearly understand the true nature of this world. The path she planned for herself next is very clear. It's just that this path was planned before the sacred timeline was broken. Now, it's time to change. On the road to the highest, she must have not only enemies, but also friends and a backer. Otherwise, it is easy to fall in the middle of the journey. After laughing, she frowned again. Recently, she smelled the breath of the storm spreading. But because the sacred timeline was broken, the original clear and unique future was divided into countless future lines, which were chaotic and complicated, so that the future was completely unclear. Before, she was numb to the only future, but now she couldn't see the future clearly, which gave her a headache. After thinking about it, she let it go again, but felt a little bit of excitement. The unclear future makes people look forward to it, and it may bring her more surprises. In the temple bedroom, Leon was wearing a thin white veil, standing on the wide balcony, holding a glass of red wine in his hand and taking a sip, in a good mood. While enjoying the beauty of life, when he saw the birth of the first Saint Sia, there will be more Saint Sias in the future. That sense of accomplishment made him feel satisfied and felt that life was too beautiful. A happy family, no worries about birth, old age, sickness, and death, switching between luxurious material life and plain and peaceful family life, the continuous accumulation of insights into the small universe, gradually becoming stronger. Not only the children, Selina, and others, but also the people under his rule feel fulfilled. He is the same. Leon is not a robot, nor an ascetic monk. All his efforts, cheating, are for enjoyment, and eternal enjoyment. The principle is the same. Behind him, a beautiful snake just coiled around, whispering softly in his ear, "My great master, Selina has been recognized by the Scorpio Gold Saint Cloth, which is really enviable." The charming voice is full of resentment, and it seems to be envious. But only Leon knows that this beautiful snake is completely acting and playing tricks. If she is really jealous, she will never say it out of her character, because women know their temper and personality very well. Shouldn't you work harder? Let Selina be the first to be recognized by the Saint Cloth. Leon said teasingly. Alas, who made me have no time to practice? I need to spend a lot of energy to manage various departments, and I have to spend time with my dear master. I don't have time to practice like Selina and others. Ophelia chatted. The microcosm you have is not inferior to Selina, and even higher, Ophelia. Leon pierced this chat and revealed a rather scary fact. The person who was forcibly elevated by him in the awakening microcosm, the one with the highest ability, was not Selina, who was the first to be recognized by the Golden Saint Cloth, nor was it Caecilius, who was devoted to hard practice and would not go out to pursue power unless he had nothing to do. Instead, it was Ophelia in front of him who spent some energy and time to manage the national industry under his command. Under the premise of spending some time, her growth speed is faster than Selina, Caecilius, and others. Even he, who was at the level of sixth sense at the time, could not compare with this beautiful snake. The speed of her progress surprised Leon. In addition, in fact, Ophelia already had a guardian constellation early, and could even summon the holy clothes in advance before Selina, but she did not choose to do so. After being exposed, the beautiful snake did not show any guilty conscience, but loosened her hands, barefoot, wearing a light gauze coat, her white and tender skin looming, walked a few steps, gently stretched out her hand, and a glass of red wine appeared in her hand and sat in the arms of the two Leons. After shaking for a while, she stared at the red wine in the glass with ripples. I was born and experienced since I was a child, which made me know the beauty of power. I was once addicted to it and pursued the supreme power. In this process, I would do anything at all costs. Beauty and poison are my weapons. In order to maintain them, I would sign a contract with the devil. Until you appeared. Ophelia whispered, her beautiful eyes full of memories. She stretched out a finger, and a dark purple halo bloomed on her fingertips. It contains the fifth episode that even the so-called gods can kill. Her eyes were rippling, and she looked at it infatuatedly. You changed my cognition. This world is wonderful and cruel. My dear master, you gave me hope to move towards a greater path. The ambition in my heart is like a flame. It is this ambition that supports me, makes me progress, and makes me grow. Even if I distract my energy to manage those departments, this process will become the fuel for my growth. Ophelia's long green hair was scattered, and her head was leaning on Leon's chest, gentle and firm. Leon just listened silently, and it was a little weird in the end. What is this? The strongest worker? He actually found a hexagonal worker, who was a complete mess. While helping him manage and develop, not only would it not slow down his own growth because of the energy consumption, but it would accelerate the process. Able to manage forces, accompany him in the human-making movement, and fight the enemy in person. What a God-given worker! Before, he was still worried about whether Ophelia would be pushed to the limit, and considered materializing something good to help her. Now it seems that it's all about helping her for fun. Then he threw the wine glass, picked up the beautiful snake with almost no bones in his arms and walked towards the bedroom. I'm happy today, and I must reward this perfect worker. Somewhere in the Antarctic ice sheet. Under the vast ice layer, the wind and snow were mixed. In front of a wide specially built transport vehicle, Zima, Cynthia Schmidt, Brock Rumlow, and more than 20 Hydra soldiers, wearing thick down jackets, stood there in a daze. The howling wind and snow were blowing, and there was no other sound. The Scorpio Gold Saint, guarding the zodiac, is incredible. After a long time, Zima retracted his gaze. Under the starry sky, the peerless figure had quietly disappeared, and the sacred sound was no longer ringing, but the scene just now was deeply engraved in his mind, and he sighed with a helpless and yearning tone. It was like a myth coming. When you personally feel that sacred feeling, how desperate will the darkness hidden under the light be? After Zima sighed, he looked at Cynthia Schmidt, who was silent on the side, and suddenly felt that working in Hydra seemed to have no future. He used to think that Hydra was lurking under the mainstream society, lurking, waiting to erupt, regardless of whether there would be a war in the future. But at least, from a human perspective, Zima believed that he had stood at the pinnacle of human power. He had ambitions, and believed that under his leadership, he would be able to make a career and let his name hang high like the sun. Now, he felt very sour and powerless in his heart. What ambitions, what Hydra, all of them are as boring as children playing house. Hydra? Now it is just a group of rats hiding in the sewers struggling to survive. Perhaps the ruler of Madripoor harbor, God, is watching them entertaining themselves, joking, and laughing. It is definitely more likely that they are not even qualified to be noticed by him. Alas, Zima sighed silently. He has no way out. As one of the leaders of Hydra, he can't survive if Hydra dies. All his efforts will vanish. Now the only woman he can trust is the new Red Skull, Cynthia Schmidt. God! Cynthia Schmidt came back to her senses and seemed to be very disdainful. What saints, what zodiac, they are just a group of god thieves who possess power beyond mortals, deceiving the world and stealing the name. How many people have called themselves gods since ancient times? Isn't Magneto one? But what about him? He is just a poor guy hiding from place to place. That person is nothing more than a person who plays the role of a god. Build a stage and perform for the world to see. There is only one real God. Cynthia Schmidt's disdainful expression became fanatical again. Zima's expression did not change, but he sneered in his heart. He thought that the so-called only God this woman was talking about was Red Skull. But he didn't know that the God that Cynthia Schmidt was talking about at the moment was not the same person as the one he thought. Okay, we should continue our journey. Cynthia Schmidt returned to the transport vehicle. Zima and Brock Rumlow looked at each other and did not speak. Instead, they returned to the transport vehicle silently and continued to move towards their destination. Under Zima's guidance, this specially built transport vehicle braved the wind and snow and opened a road under the ice. 1 hour, 2 hours, finally, they came to a glacial canyon. On one side of the canyon, there were huge amounts of icebergs. Zima, Cynthia Schmidt, Brock Rumlow and another woman walked down from the transport vehicle with the Hydra soldiers and walked towards the huge iceberg. There was a crack in the iceberg that penetrated the ice layer. The crack was very small and could only allow one person to pass through. The road was very narrow and winding. When you entered it, you could see the huge iceberg above. The cracks in the ice layer were regular and snowflakes would fall every moment. Strangely, they did not completely fill the cracks. It seemed that some force melted the falling snowflakes, and water droplets flowed along the ice walls on both sides of the cracks in the ice layer. The group walked along the crack for a while. Finally, they reached the end, which was much larger and could accommodate many people at a time. Zima looked at Cynthia Schmidt and pointed at the iron door with thick gloves. This door is fully enclosed and connected to the passage behind. I once tried to blow up the mountain to enter. But according to structural research experts, the power of the explosion blew up the iron door, and the passage and everything inside were blown up together. Zima had known for a long time that this place was built by Red Skull. He didn't know what was inside, but the relevant records allowed him to analyze, for the money, that there might be something that Red Skull once had, that is, the Book of Skulls. The Book of Skulls is said to record the truth of this century and keep many secrets unknown to many people. This is something my father left behind, definitely considering the way of violent bombing. Cynthia Schmidt said coldly, walked forward, stretched out her hand and took off a coin engraved with Hydra around her neck. Put the coin on a corner of the huge Hydra skull pattern in front of the iron gate in front of him, and the coin and the pattern fit perfectly. The next moment, boom, a dull sound sounded, and the whole iceberg began to shake wildly. Everyone took a step back unconsciously. Soon, in the dull sound, the iron gate automatically moved horizontally to the left, shrinking. In front of him was a long dark passage. You all stay here. Cynthia Schmidt saw the passage, looked at Zima, Brock Rumlow and others and said something, then walked straight into the dark passage. Zima and Brock Rumlow frowned, not knowing what they were thinking. The latter glanced at the woman beside him. From the beginning, the woman was silent and didn't say a word, but he felt the dangerous aura emanating from the woman. As the captain of the Special Operations Team, he had experienced countless life and death battles. He developed a very mysterious feeling. This intuition saved him in many critical moments, so Brock Rumlow believed in his intuition very much. Never act rashly. As for Zima, it was even simpler. He originally didn't have any super combat power or super ability. If he made any unusual movements, the Hydra soldiers behind him would definitely beat him into a sieve. Chapter 73. The waiting time is always so painful. Zima and Brock Rumlow were very calm. The vibration stopped soon, and apart from the sound of breathing, there was only the crisp sound of water drops falling on the ground. I don't know how long it has been. Soon, crisp footsteps came, and Cynthia Schmidt's figure emerged from the dark passage and walked in front of the two. The woman's expression seemed very calm, holding a retro and large old book in her hand. Brock Rumlow was fine, but Zima caught the heat and excitement in her eyes. She found the answer she wanted to find. Zima made a firm judgment in his heart. As for what it was, he didn't go over to be curious, nor did he intend to ask, because curiosity is often the factor that destroys oneself. Standing at such a height, Zima understood this. But to his surprise, he suppressed his curiosity, but Cynthia Schmidt raised the large and old-fashioned old book in his hand. My father was the first to find the truth of this world before all human beings. Incredible truth. The fire in her eyes could not be hidden at all. It was a kind of shock and expectation to discover the truth of this world. The more she learned from it, the more she found how small this world was. Struggles, wars, interests, resources, etc. were simply ridiculous. Cynthia believed that her father did not take this book to heart at the beginning. Therefore, he missed the true value of this book. But she found the most important information from it. What do you want to do next? Don't forget your promise, Cynthia Schmidt. Zima didn't care so much, he just wanted to protect himself. In the base built by another father, there are what I need. Cynthia Schmidt glanced at Zima, said indifferently, and left first, followed by Zima and Brock Rumlow. Neither of them noticed the change in the eyes of Cynthia Schmidt, who was walking in front. The Book of Yggdrasil, the Hammer of the Eastern God. Mother, I believe in my judgment. The so-called god of Midgard must be the big snake. The world of Midgard has always been so backward and ignorant. Now, only a few years have passed. Now, not only the father god who can rival the father god has been born, but also those warriors who can defeat the elder brother. In the corridor outside the crystal palace where Odin's wife Frigga lived, Loki said to his mother Frigga solemnly, as if he was sure that his guess was correct. Thor was hesitant to speak, and he had a good impression of Leon. In other words, he respected all the strong men, especially the women of Selina. Although they were besieged, he could see that the strength of each of them was not weaker than his own, and he liked their fighting style. Sif stood in front of Frigga silently without expressing his opinion. Frigga, Odin's wife, the mother of Thor and Loki, was gentle as water. Her prestige in the whole Asgard was second only to Odin. Thor, the future king, was far inferior to her. Frigga felt helpless as she watched her silly son swearing so confidently here. Frigga waited until Loki finished speaking before speaking gently. I have always believed in your judgment, but some things are not as simple as you think. Perhaps you should not be too arbitrary. Although Frigga looks gentle on the outside, she is actually very accomplished in magic. Loki's magic was basically taught by her. As Odin's wife, she knows a lot more than her two silly sons. Midgard Camartage, Asgardian Sorcerer Supreme Ancient One, and Leon, who has risen rapidly recently, she knows everything clearly. Especially the latter, she is also a person who can perceive and see the sacred timeline. Leon, who can completely break the sacred timeline, is being watched by Odin, and she is also paying attention to it at the first time. This is related to the future of Asgard, the future of Thor and Loki. But she didn't expect Leon to grow so fast. If he is not careful, he will become the father of heaven, on the same level as Odin. He was still observing and considering how to treat Leon, but now he has thrown all these ideas away. Putting aside his personality, his growth rate and current strength are enough for Asgard to take him seriously. Now, his own stupid son is so smart that he thinks Leon is a big snake. What kind of operation is this? Mother Loki is not really stupid. Seeing Frigga's obvious meaning, he immediately realized that it might not be as simple as he thought. He frowned and said, "Do you know the one in Midgard? He is a miracle that breaks the rules, Pagey." Frigga reached out and gently stroked Loki's face, then said, "He is also the person your father admires. Many things need you and Thor to understand. I told you that if you want to understand everything, you need to know how to think and analyze, not blindly. If you want to confirm your ideas, go and contact him and observe patiently, but don't be arrogant. No matter what, he is a god at the same level as your father. On the premise that he is not an enemy, maintain due respect for him. The answers you want need you two brothers to explore together. This is a disaster that is destined to come, and you will be the end of breaking this disaster." After that, Melika left, leaving behind Thor, Sif, and Loki, who were confused. "My brother, what did mother say?" Thor racked his brains to recall what his mother said and tried to analyze it, but it was obvious that he failed. However, he did not get discouraged, but hugged his brother Loki and asked with a smile. "Anyway, he has a wise brother." "Brain? What brain?" "His brother is his brain." Being interrupted by Thor, Loki, who was still thinking, rolled his eyes and said with disgust, "Mother said that my previous guess was wrong, let us contact the God King from Midgard again." Thor's eyes lit up, and he hurriedly urged Loki to leave the Crystal Palace and go to Midgard. As a battle maniac, he was beaten so miserably in Midgard, although he was convinced, but he did not admit defeat at all. Seeing Thor like this, Loki sighed helplessly and looked at Sif. The latter also had an expression of suffering, which comforted Loki a little. "Thor, listen to what Loki says. Don't be so anxious for now." It was Sif who spoke again and stopped Thor, who was about to go to Midgard to fight with Selina. Thor was a little reluctant, but he still stopped. My dear brother, don't forget that the most important thing for us now is the big snake. Loki was impatient, but he suppressed it and pretended to be calm. This sentence alerted Thor. Yes, fighting is a matter for the future. Now the main thing is to deal with the big snake first. Mother said that the big snake was indeed sealed in Midgard by the Father God, but now countless years have passed. Midgard has undergone vicissitudes and changes over the years, so that the former seal site is no longer in the original place, and may be buried deeper in the sea. Loki continued, and Thor and Sif nodded. We need to think in a different way. Ubbage, the two continued to nod like chickens pecking at rice. Loki looked at the couple who didn't know what brains were, and felt very tired. But thinking about it from the side, Thor without brains is good. Thor showed his wisdom through this matter. Isn't it a good opportunity for Asgard to prove that he is the most suitable king of synthesis? So he immediately stimulated his motivation and his tone became slightly excited. He stretched out his hand, and a green light flashed across his palm. An ancient retro book appeared in his hand. After opening it, he pointed to one of the pages and said to the two. The ancient and powerful tyrannical God King, after his failure, his loyal messengers died with the failure of his master, but the messenger's mission was not completed. When he is saved, he will gather his loyal messengers again and spread fear and disaster to the world. As Loki read out this text, Tur and Sif were thoughtful. Messengers. Yes, they are messengers. The serpent once had 8 followers, who were also the most powerful warriors. They followed the serpent and brought disaster to the 9 realms. Loki nodded and analyzed, if anyone wants to save the serpent, it is undoubtedly these messengers. These messengers. The Book of the World does not mention the identities of these messengers, but they hold the hammer and are called the Lord of the Sky Hammer. The hammer? The Lord of the Sky Hammer. Thor was stunned for a moment and took a look at Mjolnir in his hand. Is there any connection between the two? After thinking for a while, he still did not come to any useful conclusion, then scratched his head angrily, and finally gave up. Okay, my brother, what should we do? We have to find this hammer. I think this hammer may have something to do with the serpent breaking the seal. Loki said patiently now. This is the time to show his wisdom. Let's go find Heimdall, he is the guardian god of Asgard, maybe he has information about this hammer in his memory. Thor made a decision immediately, and then patted Loki on the shoulder with a hearty smile. It's good to have a smart brother. Antarctica. In an abandoned base somewhere, as the door was opened, a group of people rushed in. These people were Cynthia Schmidt, Brock Rumlow, Z, and 10 others. The base was still deserted, and even because of the weather, the entire base was severely frozen, and the instruments and equipment in various places were covered with a layer of frost. However, their goal was not these instruments and equipment at all, but to follow Cynthia Schmidt to the deep center of the base. This was a wide field, and on the ground, there was a frozen hammer. Seeing the hammer, Cynthia Schmidt's eyes lit up and walked forward quickly. The surroundings were freezing cold. She just stood in front of the hammer and felt as if her body was invaded by the cold air. Even if she was wearing a thick down jacket, she couldn't stop the terrifying cold. Eve, you have to know that she is not an ordinary person, but a strengthener. Otherwise, she would not be in good health at the age of 60 or 70. What you are looking for is actually a hammer. Zima was dumbfounded. He could see that the old equipment in the entire base was a kind of detection and maintenance equipment, and the thing it detected was the hammer on the ground. This is a divine hammer. It possesses the power that only gods can possess. The first person to hold it will become. As she spoke, Cynthia Schmidt bent down, grasped the handle of the hammer, and shouted the last word, God. Boom. When her hand touched the handle of the hammer, a surge of energy burst out with her and the handle as the center. A series of blue lightnings intertwined and collided and exploded, forcing Zima, Brock Rumlow and other Hydra soldiers to retreat. Everyone stared at the woman in the center of the lightning with wide eyes. Then they saw the woman holding the hammer and lifting it from the ground. The down jacket she was wearing was actually covered with armor that had never been seen before, a green robe, bright silver shoulder armor, wrist armor, and leg armor under the shining of electric light. The original down jacket disappeared, she held the long hammer with both hands, and the biting cold air slowly spread. Whether it was Moser, Rumlow or other Hydra soldiers, they all shuddered. The silent woman looked at the familiar yet strange figure with a worried look. Cynthia, she finally couldn't help her worry and called out Cynthia's name, but got no response. Then she saw Cynthia holding a long hammer in both hands and saying a sentence in a cold voice. "I have been reborn, father." She turned around and looked at the people behind her, and everyone was shocked, because Cynthia's originally pretty face, with the cold air, the skin on her face gradually cracked, revealing an ugly and hideous red head for a moment, with a black long whip swinging on the top of the head. The skin was exactly the same as Red Skull. Mortal Cynthia looked at everyone present coldly, stayed on the worried woman for a second longer, then squatted slightly and exerted force suddenly. With a boom, the whole person broke through the base's ceiling layer by layer, and the rubble fell all over the sky, and she completely disappeared. Cynthia the woman screamed heartbreakingly. Chapter 74. Damn, there's something wrong with that hammer. The woman looked at the figure that broke through the ceiling of the base and disappeared without a trace. Her expression was extremely ugly. She seemed to have thought of something, and rushed to the transport vehicle outside the base like crazy, took out an iron box from the vehicle, entered the password to open it, and took out the book. The real name of this skeleton book is the Book of Yggdrasil. She quickly searched for the answer she wanted in this book. Finally, she froze in place. On the top of the book, there was a passage recorded: "The Great Snake, the God of Fear, spreading the fear of the 9 realms, the Skyhammer Venerable, the Goddess of Picture Skadi." So that's it, Skyhammer, Skyhammer. Muttering in disbelief, the Book of Yggdrasil in her hand slipped unconsciously without noticing. This record shows the changes in Cynthia after getting the hammer. Even if she is stupid, she can think that there must be something in the hammer that changed Cynthia's personality. Even brainwashing. She turned her head sharply. Zima, Brock Rumlow and others, the Hydra soldiers, were watching her not far away. She took a deep breath, suppressed her anxiety, bent down to pick up the Book of Yggdrasil, came to Zima and Rumlow, stretched out her hand and placed the book in front of them, and said coldly, "I think Cynthia's change is because of this." The two of them looked at the page of the book that had been opened, saw that paragraph, and thought of Cynthia's various inhuman performances after holding the hammer, and immediately understood in their hearts, looked at each other, and the latter had no expression. "It seems that the deal between us has failed." Zima's tone was very bad. He made a deal with Cynthia to help her find the book and find what the other party wanted in order to preserve part of his own power. Now, the thing has been found, but the other party is no longer the same person. He is not interested in these ghosts and gods, but now he has nothing to gain, so he is naturally not in a good mood. More importantly, some of the information revealed in this book is terrifying when you think about it carefully. Spread the fear of the 9 realms, the god of fear, and disaster is coming. Does it mean that the earth will be affected, and then, no matter where he is in the world, he will be impacted? Zima found that the world has become so terrible. The more you know, the more desperate you will be. In such a world, you can't escape. These are none of my business. My only goal in living until now is to protect Cynthia. The hammer has changed Cynthia, and I want to find her again. The woman gritted her teeth and said, then turned and walked towards the transport vehicle, followed by the rest of the Hydra soldiers. Looking at the woman's back, Zima's eyes flickered, and he suddenly shouted, "She is no longer the person you know. She has a power that mortals cannot resist. Susan Scarborough, you know that all your efforts are in vain. If you want to get her back, there may be only one person in this world who can do it." The woman called Susan Scarborough paused. She turned around suddenly, her eyes sharp. "Who?" Madrid. Before he finished speaking, a storm gathered in the sky, heavy snow fell, and a colorful beam of light fell down, accompanied by lightning and thunder, interrupting Baron Zima's words. Everyone looked over with seriousness and vigilance, not knowing what happened. It was just that the terrifying energy emitted by the colorful beam of light was frightening. Soon, the colorful beam of light disappeared, and 2 figures walked out of it, a blonde burly man wearing medieval armor, holding a hammer and wearing a red cotton jacket, and the other wearing a green robe and armor, and a black-haired man wearing a horned helmet. "Who are you?" Susan frowned and asked. If it was an ordinary person, with her cold-bloodedness, she would have let the Hydra soldiers shoot and kill him long ago, but the other party's performance was extraordinary, so she had to be cautious. "Mortal, I feel the breath of Asgard's power from you." The 2 who came were Thor and Loki. Heimdall felt the divine power from Asgard in the Antarctic region of Midgard, and quickly teleported Thor and Loki to this area. Seeing this group of mortals, you really felt the remnants of the Asgard divine calendar information. "Asgard? Are you Thor and Loki, the sons of the king of God Odin?" Zima raised his eyebrows and said in a lost voice. Rumlow was completely numb. He found that since Pierce's death, his experience has become more and more rich, which can completely break the worldview that humans should have. Various gods, big snakes, and now Asgard, Odin, Thor, and Loki in Norse mythology have all appeared. Suddenly, I felt that some of the previous experiences were just a small fight, completely meaningless. As for doubting the identities of the two, based on the way they appeared just now, ordinary people can't do it. It seems that there are still some mortals who remember us now, but we don't have much time. Tell me, man, why do you have the breath left by Asgard? Who is that person? Is it the Great Snake? The Great Snake? Zima murmured and looked at Susan, who gritted her teeth and raised the book of Yggdrasil in her hand. My only family found a hammer. I suspect that it was the sky hammer left by the Great Snake. That thing must have some power that affected her, and she left with the hammer. Damn, Lord Skyhammer! Thor and Loki's faces changed. At this time, they finally understood how the Great Snake revived. It turned out that Lord Skyhammer, the spokesperson of the Great Snake, had appeared. Heimdall! Thor raised his head and roared at the sky. Thor, Loki, I found the woman with the sky hammer. She is heading to the depths of the sea, probably to release the Great Snake. The hurried voice of Heimdall came to their ears. Where? I'll guide you, go and stop her. Thor didn't waste any words, grabbed Loki, waved Mjolnir towards the sky, and rushed straight into the sky with Loki. With a sonic boom, rolling up layers of air waves disappeared in the endless sky, leaving Susan and a group of people looking at each other in bewilderment. Susan's expression was very ugly. Cynthia was involved in this inhuman crisis. She didn't know if Cynthia had a chance to return to her original appearance, but she didn't plan to give up. She looked at Zima. You just said the opportunity was the one in Madripoor port. Yes, the god of terror, Asgard. This is no longer a war that humans can participate in. Zima's shocked expression slowly calmed down, his eyes clear. You want Cynthia Schmidt to come back, and I need to find a new way to live. You want to abandon Hydra? Rumlow frowned and looked at Zima coldly. Hydra? Zima shook his head in silence and said sarcastically, look at our experience. What is Hydra? What is human? In front of those powerful gods, humans are like ants. Look at Thor just now, his flight speed exceeds the speed of sound. With such a body structure and strength, tell me, who can harm him with human weapons? Not to mention how many gods there are in Asgard in the entire mythology, Odin, Frigga, Sif, the three warriors of Asgard, the god of war, etc. Forget Hydra, we are like rats hiding in the sewer when facing Nick Fury and the multinational alliance. Zima now sees too clearly that the so-called ideas of Hydra before, the ambition to rule the earth, are just a small fight on the earth. In front of the gods, it is like a group of jokers playing pranks. When these gods are angered, Hydra and humans cannot withstand a natural disaster, and the result is only extinction. The reason why humans can develop and evolve faster than other creatures is that they know how to avoid danger. So, choice is the most important thing. Zima smiled bitterly. Luckily, Rumlow, we may still have a chance to choose, but some people don't even have the chance to choose. The snow was flying, and on the vast ice continent, the transport vehicle that came here slowly returned to the same way it came. The fluttering snowflakes covered all traces. And on an iceberg in the distance, a figure just watched the transport vehicle leave silently. The gorgeous and noble golden holy clothes fit the graceful and slender body. The white outer and blue inner cape and the long black hair swayed with the breeze. The delicate and beautiful face was calm, and the falling snow seemed to be afraid of her and did not dare to fall on her. Instead, it brushed past her body and fell to the ground in a regular trajectory. Venerable Skyhammer, Great Snake, Yin Ping Yang. Bang! A figure fell from the sky. It was a blonde woman in a black coat and a heroic figure. Lady Selina, there is nothing left in the base except the hammer. In addition, the woman named Cynthia is flying to the Pacific Ocean. We don't need to care. This is a disaster for Asgard and has nothing to do with us. Didn't Camartage make any moves? Selina shook her head, but Ophelia said that this is a tacit game. Odin is also waiting for the revival of the snake. Odin is also waiting. The woman raised her eyebrows, a little puzzled. Selina curved her lips, that is a game between gods. If Ophelia hadn't told me, I wouldn't understand it. As the first saint recognized by the gold cloth, She is different from other awakening sixth sense warriors and has more qualifications and power to know some secrets. Many situations can be seen from multiple perspectives, and what you see will be different. In Thor and Loki's view, this is a terrible disaster that swept across the 9 realms, a disaster for Asgard. They need to stop the snake from breaking the seal. For Odin and Leon, it is a telepathic test through the snake. The direction of the test is the alliance. Asgard has its own pride. Odin cannot personally go down and show Leon the alliance. The reason is similar to the king not meeting the king. But Asgard's decline is an indisputable fact. Although Asgard maintains a terrible deterrent combat power that the world cannot know because of the existence of Soul Castle, it is only limited to the critical moment of survival. Soul Castle also has its own limitations. It is impossible to allow those who enter Soul Castle to help Asgard through the crisis without limit. Before Thor and Loki grow up, the best way to help Asgard through the decline is to find a suitable and powerful ally. Leon naturally entered Odin's sight, definitely the sacred timeline, and Leon's own special existence, Selina definitely couldn't know. Ophelia didn't know either, except for these, she could draw these conclusions. Odin couldn't lose face, and the prerequisite for an alliance was communication, owing favors, and making friends was nothing faster than fighting side by side and fighting together in battle. This time, the big event of the snake was the best time. So, Selina knew that they only needed to keep their troops in place now. For this level of strategy, they only needed to execute and see. This time, the commotion was big. I hope that those high-ranking officials and rich people will not be scared. Humph, those people are greedy and should go to hell. The blonde female instructor snorted coldly. She was born in the Red House, so she didn't know those guys too well. Pull out 1 and kill 4, there will be no innocent. I'm afraid that even hell won't accept these scum. Selina laughed out loud, and then whispered, if you really don't like it, just kill them. The tone was full of indifference and indifference to life. Or, that's the case for those who have committed the most heinous crimes. There will be a chance. Now my goal is to get the approval of the Saint Cloth first. Then work hard, Irene. Now I am the only Saint Cea, and I am very lonely. Go to hell, Serena. In the snow and wind, Irene's angry voice spread everywhere. Big snake. In the camping site of the town park square. 2 little babies brought 2 lively big dogs to play with the children who also came to the park square. In front of the grill, the old man wearing a white chef scarf held the grilled meat skewers in both hands, with an expression that said, "You are teasing me. Who understands? Originally I was happy to take my wife and children out to play today, but the eldest son suddenly jumped out of a crisis that could threaten the whole world and even the 9 realms. Doesn't this affect the mood?" Chapter 75. Worry? Not at all. With his understanding of his son Leon, if there was danger, he would not have such a calm expression and accompany his parents, brothers, and sisters to the park for camping. Ever since Leon showed extraordinary qualities, his thinking and wisdom have exceeded Li Xiang's imagination. He knew at that time that Leon was a natural god, although he thought he was the son of God at that time. But his maturity is far beyond his peers. Li Xiang and his wife have completely given up. They go to work just because they need to socialize and get used to it. The working hours have been greatly reduced. Amy has decided to quit her job and go home after the end of this semester. The couple has been thinking about buying a more luxurious RV after Amy quits her job, and going on a nationwide tour in the United States, visiting every city and every corner. After the United States, they will go to other countries one by one. As for the 2 little babies, they will let Leon take care of them. When the old man and Leon talked about this plan, Leon agreed and complained that the old couple's child was just an accident, and the couple was true love. Anyway, the old man and his mother's family are completely free in terms of lifespan, health, and wealth. Leon fully agrees with this and is even happy to see it. Play whatever you want. When the Earth is finished, go to Asgard to play in other galaxies and planets in the universe. When this universe is finished, go to other dimensional universes to play. The most feared thing for permanent life is not death, but the loss of motivation, interest, and hobbies. Look at the universe elder Gao Tianzun, collector, who has lived for countless years and forcibly cultivated interests and hobbies. Otherwise, he would be a walking corpse that can live for a long time, and his mind may even be twisted and crazy. Not to mention, when Leon expressed these ideas, Li Xiang and Amy were full of excitement and yearning. It still has to be their own son 01. What national travel, global travel, the pattern is small, the whole universe travel, multi-universe travel to adventure is too exciting. Definitely, that's all later, the couple will talk about it after they have traveled all over the United States. While having a barbecue, Amy was chatting with her bestie on the phone, and the father and son were still discussing the matter of the snake. Leon never hides anything from his family. He threw a cosmic secret book to his father and mother for entertainment, so that the couple could understand the situation of the major forces in the universe. Li Xiang especially likes to read these. After all, these are the truths and secrets that ordinary people cannot know. If the snake is revived, what will happen to the earth? The father is still very kind in nature. He is afraid that many innocent people will die after the snake is revived. Leon shook his head, picked up the spice bottle and sprinkled it on the skewers and said casually, "Don't worry, father, the first target of the snake revenge is Odin and Asgard. The earth is just a byproduct, just another snake." "That's right." The father nodded in agreement, mainly for the last sentence. After all, in his heart, Leon is the strongest one. What snake, what fear God King, sounds very powerful, but it is definitely not Leon's opponent. Just that confident. By the way, I picked up Lily and Dean yesterday and saw that teacher Perron was worried and looked unhappy. I felt that something might happen. Dad seemed to have thought of something and mentioned it casually. Amy, who was sitting on a chair not far away and making a phone call, paused for a moment, glanced at the father and son without expression, and watched with her peripheral vision. Leon didn't think too much, and took the grilled skewers in his hand with satisfaction, put them in his mouth and took a bite, chewing the grilled meat with satisfaction. "A demon has entangled her." "Hey!" Dad immediately looked at Leon in disbelief. "Can a demon come in here? Is that demon very powerful?" "Not here, but her childhood companion and friend. The ability is a bit interesting. It spreads fear in dreams, absorbs fear to become powerful, and kills people. It's quite similar to the ability of the snake." Li Xiang picked up the plate, put the grilled skewers on it, and sprinkled spices. Demons, ghosts, and resentment collections have similar abilities. Leon took the plate and walked a few steps, came to the small table and put it down, poured a glass of juice and handed it to the old man, who took it and drank it all. "You didn't plan to help, but the girl likes you very much." The old man bumped Leon's shoulder and said ambiguously. The two of them didn't look like father and son at this time, but like brothers. "I left my power mark in her soul, the demon can't hurt her, and it may be good for her." Since she saw it, Leon was definitely prepared. After all, she had a good impression of Perron and would not watch him die. After the voice fell, his eyes moved slightly. The action is quite fast. Boom! In the Pacific Ocean near the northeast of the Philippines and the Mariana Islands, the sky was covered with dark clouds, as if it had turned into a whirlpool. The terrifying thunder kept exploding, and the strong wind blew through the originally calm sea, causing terrifying waves. And on this sea, a medium-sized fishing boat was rising and falling with the surging sea. The captain's roar came, "Damn it, quickly retract the trawl net, we have to leave here. What are those idiots in the Meteorological Bureau doing? Didn't they predict that there would be no wind and waves today?" The captain shuttled through the fishing boats in a raincoat, directing the work of the sailors. At this moment, heavy rain poured down, and the entire ship was swaying with the wind and waves. The experienced captain knew that they had to leave this sea area. He didn't know how long the wind and waves would last, but he observed the strange dark cloud vortex and lightning in the sky, and knew that the wind and waves were strange and would last for a long time. The captain reached out and wiped his face wet by the rain. As if he heard something, he turned his head to the edge of the deck and looked at the surging sea. In the depths of the sea, it seemed that he saw lightning. Just as the captain was stunned and the other sailors were still retrieving the fishing nets, a terrifying wave suddenly came fiercely in the distance. "No, damn it, grab everything you can grab. Throw away what you have in your hands, quickly." Amid the roars, the big waves completely overturned the medium-sized fishing boat. The fishing boat turned upside down, and the captain and sailors were tossed around in the sea. What was even more terrifying was that the upside-down fishing boat pressed them to the bottom of the sea, and the surging waves made it impossible for them to break through the water. Next, they were greeted by death. Just when these captains and sailors who were floating in the sea were desperately waiting for death, they prayed in their hearts that the gods could save them. God seemed to respond to them, and a miracle happened. An invisible force swept over them, and they found that their bodies were floating rapidly in a daze, and finally broke through the sea surface. The fishing boat that was originally overturned by the waves was also corrected and also suspended in the air, and the wind and waves could not hit it. A group of people choked on water in the air, looking at this scene with shock on their faces, and then suddenly fell, hitting the deck of the hull like dumplings. Fortunately, the height was not very high. When they fell on the deck, a group of people just groaned in pain. When they raised their heads, everyone's body froze, and their eyes reflected a picture that they would never forget. In the raging waves, the swirling dark clouds in the sky, and the thunder constantly piercing the sky, a gorgeous and noble figure stood, the blue cloak on the outside and inside swayed with the black long hair in the wind. Under her feet were the surging waves, and the sky exploded and pierced the lightning brought by the lightning, illuminating her majestic and sacred figure. Heavy rain fell, and no one seemed to dare to offend the god. Everyone, including the captain, instinctively knelt on the ground and prayed under this miraculous scene, with fanaticism on their faces. Scorpio Gold Saint. It's Lady Selina. She saved us, great God, thank you for your mercy. They all recognized this person, the one who ignited the heat all over the world, made people admire, envy and fear, and was truly regarded by the world as the guard corps under the command of God, the Gold Saint Selina. As if hearing the excited voice, Selina turned her head and looked at it. She gracefully stretched out her hand and waved it back without saying a word. Under the huge psychokinesis, holding this fishing boat with a rough fate, with the captain and sailors kneeling on the deck to pray, riding the wind and waves, flying towards the distance, away from this dangerous and surging sea. Selina, who saved a boatload of people, didn't take this matter to heart. To her, it was just a casual thing, just like the words that once echoed in her ears. Under her cold face, she had an indelible passion and kindness in her heart. Looking down at the sea below, through the surging sea water, she saw the Mariana Trench, which is known as the deepest in the world, and the battle 11,000 meters below the sea. It was really lively, but it's still too late. Selina murmured. Just as she said, the moment her voice fell, the whole world suddenly ushered in a terrifying change. A terrifying and violent breath spread like a dark cloud to all parts of the earth. The whole world was full of strange phenomena, as if it was upside down. The clear sky was covered by dark clouds like a night, and the night turned into day. The sea reacted, and countless creatures were anxious and chirping and roaring. Even the magnetic field began to become disordered, causing everyone in the world to breathe a breath of fear in their hearts uncontrollably. Only the small town of Sedona, the port of Madripo, Kosovia, and several training bases and scientific research bases established by Leon were completely unmolested. Teen Mutant Academy. Damn, how could this happen? The X-Men suppressed the uncontrollable fear in their hearts and constantly comforted the students in the school. The crying, screaming, and roaring were like a symphony. The effect of comfort was very general. Some students with weak control ability were about to lose control because of fear. Suddenly, the invisible and gentle spiritual power passed by, just like light dispelling darkness, dispelling the fear in the hearts of students, teachers, and logistics personnel in the school. Don't be afraid of the fear in your heart, children. You are the master of your heart. Fear is not invincible. The gentle and encouraging voice of Professor X came into everyone's mind. Under the guidance of Professor X, the students were finally calmed down. The X-Men handed the students to other teachers and hurried to the principal's office. In the office, sitting in a special instrument wheelchair, the professor in a suit looked very serious. Seeing the X-Men gathered together, Professor X didn't say much nonsense, but said directly, there was a very terrible energy fluctuation in the Mariana Trench and a terrible life was released. Professor, what is it? What we just experienced was caused by that life. Cyclops Scott asked first. Yes, this life is very ancient and powerful. Its appearance makes the whole world mourn. I can feel that it is constantly creating fear and collecting fear and gradually becoming stronger. Professor X took a deep breath and said in a deep voice. His former gentleness was gone. Creating fear continuously? How? It is too powerful. The tyrannical aura it possesses spreads throughout the world. All people in this world will be infected by this aura and breed fear. As it becomes stronger, this fear will make people crazy, desperate, and even completely dead. Spreading throughout the world. Everyone was shocked. One of them, a bearded man wearing a white vest and brown jacket, holding a cigar in his mouth, spoke up, this is a crisis sweeping the entire world. If it is not stopped, does it mean that both humans and mutants will perish? You guessed right, Logan. We must find a way to stop it. Defeat or kill him before he absorbs fear and becomes stronger. Professor X rubbed his brows. We don't have much time. The breath of fear has made people all over the world start to fear and turmoil. Logan, Scott, and Jean, you must set off as soon as possible. I'm going to wear a mind-amplifying helmet to see if I can slow down the spread of this breath of fear. We got it, Jean, let's go. At the critical moment, Scott didn't care about the nonsense and led everyone out of the principal's office to the location of the fighter plane and took the fighter plane to the scene of the incident. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel so you are notified of future uploads. You can find the next parts in the playlist visible on the screen or on my channel. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.